Thanks for waiting. We now have quorum. Alice Blank, Chair of the Environmental Protection Committee at Manhattan Community Board 1, joined by Wendy Chapman, our co-chair, and our trustee chair, who is acting as, I don't know what this position is called, but whatever it is, it sort of basically allows the whole meeting to function on remote. So thank you all. So we're going to begin with the Northwest Battery Park Coast Resiliency Project drainage report from the authority with, I think, in tandem with some of the team, which I have here, Peter Luce from Arcadis, Russ Dudley from Arcadis, Bill Barton from Turner Construction, Gwen Dawson, Battery Park City, Claudia Filipina, and Nick Bordone, all from Battery Park City Authority. So looking forward to this presentation, and to take it away, whoever is leading that. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Alice. It's Nick Bordone, and good evening, everyone. We had the opportunity to go before the EPC committee last month in September, and we had asked for the opportunity to come back the following month, this evening, to start a community conversation about drainage, about which I know there have been some questions. So thank you for Wendy and Alice and team for allowing us to be back with the team. And I will hand it over now to Gwen Dawson, our Senior Vice President for Real Property. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. Great. Okay. Good evening. I'm just going to give a little brief introduction and hand it over to the experts and let Peter start to tell you a little bit more about the substance of what we're currently working with on interior drainage. But as I'm sure many of you recall, the scopes of work for the design for the resiliency projects, both the South Battery Park City Resiliency Project and the Northwest Battery Park Resiliency Project, include, in addition to the flood barrier system, certain improvements and modifications to the interior drainage system, so that we have the benefit of protection against water rainfall that may accompany a storm surge event, as well as any incidental overtopping of the flood barrier that may occur. And with the South project, we, as again, many of you may recall, adopted an approach called the near surface isolation approach, which consisted largely of hardening of a lot of the street level infrastructure, including pressure proofing manholes, and adding regulator sluice gates, and isolation valves to address drainage issues for the South. Because the interior drainage elements of the projects are largely driven by the DEP requirements, and also follow on to the modeling that needs to be done in connection with the flood barrier system and the related drainage modeling. The interior drainage tends to lag a little behind the flood barrier design process as we formulate that modeling and have our discussions with DEP and understand more about what their requirements are. So we are now at a point with the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project that we have some guidance, and we have some more details. There's still a lot to come, but we have more details regarding what we anticipate the infrastructure improvements and modifications to be for that project as it relates to interior drainage. So with that, I will turn it over to, I think Peter is going to be picking up at this point.
Great. Thanks, Gwen. And we are going to share the screen right now from, I believe, Russ, you're going to share your screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Wonderful. Yeah, so I was just going to give a quick intro. Russ and I are going to tag team this. I'm Peter Gloss from Arcadis, the lead engineer for designing the project, and Russ is our lead drainage engineer for the project. But Russ, why don't I'll hand it off to you, and then you and I will go through this together. How does that sound?
That sounds fine. Yes, thanks, Peter, and thanks, Gwen, for that introduction, and really set the stage for essentially a continuation of the work that Battery Park City has been doing in the south area up through the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project. I prepared a few slides to step through this. Can everyone see the slide deck?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Don't avoid telling us what we're looking at right here. I find that a very interesting slide.
Sure, this is, I haven't had to present actually the title slide in quite a few meetings here. Peter, do you want to give the intro here?
Yeah, this is just a rendering of what the project could look like. It's a conceptual. There's a number of features in there that are meant to be conceptualized in the future. But I think the point of this rendering is that the team has done its best to integrate the project as much as possible into the existing urban fabric that's very unique, of course, within Battery Park City. And this particular reach we refer to as Reach 5. We've integrated the flood protection elements within the plaza area and have had a lot of coordination with Brookfield as well. And this graphic just represents that at a conceptual level. This is not per se the design, but a concept of it.
So this isn't a pool, this isn't some sort of storage tank or pool of water, this is a.
No, this is not, no, that's correct. Yeah, that's not, this is actually the marina there. Yes, that's right. So it's back to you.
Jeff Koons to
Jeff Koons in a band.
And a floating.
And a floating stage.
And a floating disco stage.
All right.
We
Yeah.
definitely are curious.
We like to get creative with our drainage solutions, that's for sure. But I think before we really dive into that part, wanted to kind of set the stage for why we're talking about this. As kind of Gwen alluded to, we do have to manage the flooding that's essentially trapped within the barrier. So that's largely what our goal is here. The project itself is trying to eliminate a coastal surge from coming in to Lower Manhattan across Battery Park City. And you can see here without the barrier, we would have an extensive amount of flooding. And so that's what's driving the project overall. But in association with that, when we isolate this area and we protect it from that storm surge, we also need to manage the storm water that's generated on the land side of that, the protected side that in cases of a coastal storm surge really has nowhere to go. And so that's what we're focused on here as part of the interior drainage work. We do this by looking at a joint storm event. And so what you'll see here is actually two different events that are kind of combined together. This graph on the bottom that shows an actual surge event from a coastal storm coming in and impacting Lower Manhattan. And in this case, it peaks at a certain elevation. And then we match that with a rainfall event that in our case, we're looking at coincidentally. And so we kind of match what the surge does and what's preventing water from draining from our area with a storm event. In this case, we're looking at both the 5-year and the 2-year rainfall event to see how we need to manage that rainfall behind the barrier. So what I had showed on the figure before is just represented here in this table. And our design conditions initially are to look at this in terms of both current risk and future risk. And so we look at this under current conditions with that surge condition that we showed before, combining that with a 5-year, 24-hour rainfall. But we're also looking at what potentially would happen in the future under sea level rise conditions, taking that storm surge, adding that with the potential sea level rise condition, in this case, another 30 inches of sea level rise, and then looking at a 2-year 24-hour storm event to see what is kind of the more conservative condition between those two. In addition to those two design criteria that we start with, we also are matching this with the 1% joint probability event. And that joint probability is the condition where both the coastal storm event and the rainfall event happens at the same time. And that's what's really driving the FEMA certification for our project. They require us to look at that 1% joint probability occurrence. And so what that essentially equates to is a variety of combinations of storms. We had highlighted these here in blue that represent what could be a 100-year rainfall event with a very small storm surge event, that 1-year storm surge event, all the way to the opposite, a 100-year storm surge and a 1-year rainfall event. In our case, with our current design conditions, they're largely more conservative to this to begin with. And so we're really trying to look at all these different scenarios to make sure in all these combinations, we are still evaluating it from a conservative standpoint. And this is a technical presentation, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt.
Can we ask a quick question about, is 1% rain?
Base, but
Is 1% rain for over 4 inches of rain? Because as you know, we've had over 4 inches of rain, which everybody, I think what did JFK got even more than that in one day.
Yeah, that's right. Recently, JFK had over 8 inches of rainfall in one day, which was a new record there at JFK. That's more equivalent to probably closer to a 100-year event statistically. But there's a variety of different types of rainfall conditions that are causing us problems. And some of those are smaller storm events, but in a shorter amount of time. And those are what the city calls a cloudburst condition. We do have some slides to talk about that in this presentation as well. But as far as FEMA looks at this, they're looking at this 1% joint probability for a 24-hour storm event. And so that is something right now that we have been evaluating, but we will be adding to our scenarios here in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. As Gwen mentioned, we are isolating through a variety of different infrastructure retrofits. And essentially the need that we have here is to isolate from the actual city's storm sewer system. The majority of Battery Park City is a separated sewer system, and so that means stormwater is collected separately and directed to the Hudson. And so to isolate from surge events coming into the stormwater system, we put on tide gates on those stormwater outfalls to prevent that water from coming back up underground through the pipes and into our protected area. But we also need to isolate from the city's combined sewer system. There are a number of combined sewer overflows located throughout this area that also present opportunities for water to come back in to our protected area. And so we have tide gates on those. And there's an interceptor, combined sewer interceptor that runs along West Street 9A that will then take combined sewer flows to the Newtown Creek through the Manhattan Pump Station. And so we have to isolate from that system as well. And we do that through near surface isolation, as Gwen mentioned, at the connections to the interceptor. And so we're not preventing the interceptor from continuing to flow and from water to get into the interceptor from east of Battery Park City. But what we're preventing is water coming up through the interceptor and backing up through the pipes into Battery Park City. And so that's kind of a key element of the isolation. In addition to those isolation components, we do have to flood proof a number of manholes, particularly along the interceptor within the protected area. And there are a couple of locations where we need to add additional gates on existing storm sewer infrastructure, especially where that crosses the protected barrier. So that's really important to prevent water from outside the area from actually getting in through the storm sewer system, but it doesn't eliminate flooding in the area. And that's primarily due to the fact that there's just a lot of rainwater that falls not only behind the protected barrier, but upstream of it that does come through the interceptor and is essentially has nowhere to go with the overflows stopped with the surge condition.
The risk of, or the belief that there is no stupid question. Can I, could I ask you to just give a little crash course on some of the terminology you're using?
Thank you.
And maybe because you have this diagram here on the right of the screen, could you use that maybe to identify what is the interceptor and, what is sluice gate? Is any of this showing up? And are these things that now exist? I guess the before and after this would be helpful, like what is existing versus what is proposed. I assume you'll get to that. I see here a proposed 18-foot high gate structure on the slide. Proposed 96-foot, maybe that's inches or feet, I can't quite.
Inches.
I just,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good comment, and let me kind of back up and explain a little bit more about the configuration. The majority of New York City is served by a combined sewer system, and what that means is that the city collects both sanitary or wastewater with stormwater in the same pipe. And so there's a variety of street level combined sewers where your site connection or house connection goes into those combined sewers. It mixes with stormwater during rain events, and then that's all collected in what's called trunk sewers and directed into the interceptor. The interceptor is another pipe as part of the combined sewer system that is set lower within the ground. And so these combined flows can go into the interceptor. And it's really that interceptor that takes all of that to the treatment plant where it's treated before it's discharged into the river. That interceptor is a large pipe, but it can only handle a certain amount of flow. That varies across the city, anywhere from generally, the city sewer system is generally sized anywhere from a 2-year to a 5-year storm event. With the latest changes in what we've seen across the city, that's obviously been a key focus of consideration for DEP in terms of expanding the capacity of their system. But there's only a limited amount of flow that can be managed by that interceptor. During larger storm events, there are what's called combined sewer overflows. And so flows that cannot be managed within the interceptor, rather than backing up into houses, there is essentially a relief for that system, and these are combined sewer overflows. I think there's on the order of around 500 CSOs throughout New York City, and there's a variety here just located within Battery Park City itself. And these are essentially larger pipes that when the flow backs up and builds up that pressure, it's able to discharge through those combined sewer overflows into the river. That is, from a water quality standpoint, we don't want that. The city spent a lot of time and effort to reduce those combined sewer overflows, but as part of a combined sewer system, it's important to have that kind of escape so that we don't back all that water up into properties. That's different than a storm sewer system. In a storm sewer system, that water is collected separately. The stormwater is collected separately from the wastewater. And so the wastewater in Battery Park City actually goes directly into the interceptor, whereas the stormwater is collected throughout Battery Park City, also enters into the city's combined sewer system in a lot of cases, but is not mixed with the wastewater before that occurs.
Is everything you're showing on the right underground?
Everything shown here on the right is underground. This is an example of a regulator. And so a regulator is essentially what manages that process of overflowing from the interceptor into the combined sewer system or the combined sewer overflow. And so it's really that regulator that we have the opportunity to retrofit. And in most cases, DEP has already put these systems in place so that they can effectively shut down the interceptor from the connection at the regulator. They often do that as a way to make sure that they can maintain systems more effectively. And so what you'll see here in this diagram is that water comes in through this combined sewer here. The regulator would send that on to the interceptor under normal flow conditions. Under high flow conditions, that would then move into the overflow, which goes in this direction. So under normal operations, everything goes to the wastewater treatment plant through the interceptor. As the flows get higher with the addition of stormwater, then eventually they'll build up until they spill into the overflow and go to the river. This is an example of a tide gate here. It's located in this chamber for demonstration purposes, but you can essentially put that anywhere along the combined sewer overflow to prevent water from backing up into this regulator chamber and causing problems upwards in your system. And then similarly, there's a gate here. This regulator gate is shown here. Here's an actual picture of one of these sluice gates. This allows us to cut off that flow from the interceptor. And what that means is that all of that water would then continue down into the overflow. It would no longer be connected to the interceptor. This is important for us because we want to maintain flows in the interceptor, but we also know that there's going to be a lot of pressure on that interceptor, and it's going to cause water to back up actually through this gate into our combined sewer system and then up through either those site connections or out of catch basins or manholes within the low areas in the protected area. So that's why we're putting in near surface isolation at these regulators. We're preventing water from coming into our area through the interceptor itself.
So the proposed 96-foot, I don't know if that's long, I assume, tide gate structure, is that a 96-foot long?
These are all in inches. That is the diameter of the pipe. And a lot of times you'll see very large combined sewer overflows. Those are sized for big events because they're meant to handle a lot of flow. And so we do have very large pipes that serve as those combined sewer overflows. And so we have to retrofit those and in some cases with these large tide gates to prevent water from coming up through those outfalls.
Just to be clear, so we're not putting new pipes in. Really, all we're doing is, if you see in the image, there's a little square, it's called a tide gate. It's basically a flap that we're putting on the outlet of the system so that water doesn't back up into it. So the regulator chambers themselves exist, pipes exist. What we're basically doing is putting in a check valve or a one-way valve so that things just don't go the wrong direction.
That's right. And even further on that, DEP has already incorporated a lot of this existing infrastructure with that in mind, right? They don't want water to come up into their system. So a lot of the outfalls already have existing tide gates. There are cases where we need to move those tide gates or put on new tide gates to certain outfalls. But a lot of this infrastructure is already in place, and we want to take advantage of that.
Another question on this slide, or just.
Yeah, you know, we've seen a lot about the flooding and the Vida and Seaport and flooding. And what about the adjoining Vida and Seaport areas? Are they similarly constructed already?
So basically, the majority of Manhattan is built out using a combined sewer system. So they would have similar components in lower Manhattan for the FIDI and Seaport area, where there are combined sewer overflows. There is an interceptor. In fact, the interceptor that goes through Battery Park City here continues south, goes around the bottom of Manhattan, and ultimately pumps water to Newtown Creek for treatment. And so there is a pump station in lower Manhattan to essentially move that water from Manhattan over the river to Newtown Creek water resource recovery facility. And so there's similar configuration there, but in the way that different areas of lower Manhattan have progressed in terms of resiliency, there are different approaches to manage the isolation of these areas. But in our area in Battery Park City, we're looking to continue on a similar path to what's been done in the South Battery Park City Resiliency Project and take advantage of a lot of the existing infrastructure in place to isolate Battery Park City from the interceptor and combined sewer system. We will talk a little more about the FIDI area in some future slides as well.
You can go ahead to the next
Good
slide.
questions. Okay, perfect. So that's you know, that's really important from an isolation component, and what that does is it limits the amount of water that we have coming into our project area. And so hopefully we're largely dealing with the water that's then already within our project area. And we do that through a variety of modeling approaches. And just really quickly, just wanted to explain that we're using what's called a rain on mesh approach. And what that means is that we can apply rainfall to the land surface within our model. And then that land surface in the model helps route that to low points, and which are ideally connected to the collection system, the sewer system. And then that water is routed into the sewer system. And then we can determine where that water goes from there once it enters that. And so what that means is that we're able to evaluate drainage issues on a pretty refined scale throughout the project area. And this is some of the essentially the results of that model analysis currently as we're in the process here. What you'll see here is that we have modeled the impacts of the barrier as well as the isolation components within the protected area by applying the storm conditions that I had described previously. So this looks at the present day and future day risk. Present day on the left, where we're looking at the 5-year rainfall and the 100-year surge. And the future conditions on the right, this is a 2-year rainfall event with that 100-year surge and 2.5 feet of sea level rise. Just to help provide context to what you're looking at in terms of the results, we have quantified flows below 1 foot and above 1 foot separately. So above 1 foot is this kind of orangish color here. And that's really important from a FEMA certification standpoint. We're really looking to maintain all flooding below 1 foot to be able to demap that area. But it's also important for us to look at potential areas of nuisance flooding as part of the modeling. And so we're looking at flooding below 1 foot in more detail as well. Mhm.
Couple questions. One is, in terms of the future conditions, why do you use 2-year rainfall and the current condition you use 5-year rainfall? Why the difference in those assumptions?
Yeah, it's a good question. And in fact, we don't necessarily expect rainfall to get lighter in the future. But what's really driving the flooding is the surge event itself. Because what we found through, especially for our model analysis, this isn't a universal consideration here, but through our model analysis in this area, it is the surge itself that prevents water from going out of the outfalls, which is resulting in the most flooding. And so we can, and we actually will be looking at more at larger rainfall events as part of an additional cloudburst analysis. But in terms of trying to manage two different types of conditions, we acknowledge that the sea level rise itself makes it more difficult to manage stormwater in our area. And so we're trying to kind of balance those two considerations from an initial perspective on identifying mitigation solutions. Now, I'll caveat that as well, that in addition to those 1% joint probability events where we have looked at rainfall conditions all the way up to the 100-year rainfall, we are going to be looking at how our mitigation solutions respond to those cloudburst scenarios too. And so this isn't the be all end all in terms of what we're designing to.
I have two more questions. One is, what's the sort of the transient for this flooding? I mean, it's going to be 1 foot in these designated areas for how long? For an hour? For a day? I mean, what's the expectation?
Yeah, that's another good question that's important to think about with these results. What we're showing here is not necessarily even just an instantaneous result within the area. What it represents is the maximum water depth across the entire modeled scenario. And so we look at that condition before that storm event comes in, and then we continue that until that storm event passes. So these results here might not necessarily even occur at the same time within the project area. They just represent the maximum depth of flooding that we see across that scenario. We can look at more details in terms of how long that flooding really occurs in these areas. Right now, we're just focused on preventing that water from getting up to that level. But I will say just offhand, once the storm event passes and we can drain our system, which, should not take very long to get to a lower tide cycle after the storm event goes by, this system drains very quickly. And so as long as that surge isn't there, we really have the opportunity to manage a lot of our stormwater through the existing overflows.
And my last question has to do with permeable pavers and pavement. As you probably know, Battery Park City has been experimenting with permeable pavers, and to the extent that a significant portion of the Esplanade and the hardscape actually became permeable, how does that impact stormwater runoff, if at all? Does that water still eventually just go into the sewer system, or does it go someplace else? And if so, where does it go?
Yeah, there's that's good that you bring that up. We are looking at a variety of different mitigation measures, including a lot of green infrastructure, and we're doing that for a variety of reasons. One is that we do have water quality goals that we need to meet as part of this project. And so we're doing that consistent with the city's unified stormwater rules to identify green infrastructure opportunities throughout the area. But another thing to kind of point out here is that a lot of this area is located on platform. There's not always a lot of opportunity to infiltrate within Battery Park City. but we're looking at ways to kind of manage that, especially through the storm event, to be able to impact the flooding. And we don't have that factored into our modeling yet, but we will as we continue to develop those solutions.
Thank you.
A couple of things I did want to highlight on this slide in terms of the results that'll kind of color our conversation moving forward. One is that we really don't see a lot of flooding directly on Battery Park City from these conditions. And a big reason is that Battery Park City is essentially higher than area to the east, along 9A and to the east of 9A. And so what's happening is that our sewer system is still activated. Water's still coming into the sewer system from Battery Park City, but that's moved towards the east because it cannot go out the outfalls because they're essentially blocked with the storm surge. And so what that does is it essentially kind of moves this area to the low points along 9A and to the east of 9A, and we don't see a lot of flooding directly on Battery Park City. The other thing to point out is that we do see flooding all the way down into the battery itself. And there is several projects happening throughout Lower Manhattan for resiliency, including the financial district and Seaport Master Plan that is looking at managing water in Lower Manhattan. We've had conversations with that team as well, led by EDC, and we're continuing to coordinate with them to make sure we're addressing all of these areas long term within the city.
Yeah, sorry, this is at a much higher level, and I just want to ask it before I forget to ask it, but with the drought flooding cycle you're seeing in California and the American West, there's a lot of talk about rain capture as a solution for the runoff problem. I know this isn't directly related to overflow and sewer, but is there any discussion on rain capture, as drought will certainly be an issue here eventually too?
Yeah, there has been discussion of that as part of our green infrastructure solutions to reuse the stormwater, especially for irrigation. We've had some initial discussions as part of the team about that, but we haven't advanced that. A key component would be finding areas where we can collect and store that stormwater, and then determining what the irrigation needs might be and how we might be able to integrate that into the project. But that's certainly, even though we don't have that fully advanced yet, that's certainly something that we're interested in doing from a variety of perspectives. It helps us from our water quality goals. It gets water out of the city's sewer system. It prevents a lot of treated drinking water from being used for irrigation, and it certainly helps us from a sustainability perspective too.
Could be one of those ways where New York can show itself to be a leader in this topic, and I'd certainly love to encourage that, and I think it's going to be a problem sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree.
Wendy.
So along those lines, I have two questions. Is there still a cistern that's being put in the lawn on the south project? Because that's my understanding.
Yes, this is Gwen. Yes, there is a cistern in Wagner Park.
Okay, so there's at least one example that we're going to capture some rainwater real time there. Obviously, I agree. I think that, I'll just say, we're going to need to capture a lot more water. Because one of the things, if I'm stating the obvious, I just, sometimes I have to break it down for my simple brain. So I've been talking about this project for a long time, telling my neighbors in Tribeca that there'll be a wet side and a dry side when this wall is complete. But I have actually maybe got that wrong, because one of the things that's going to happen is that, unless we have a hurricane with almost no rain, we will have the wet will come, and obviously we can see where it's pooling. It's going to be all on the Tribeca side of the highway, which is where it pooled during Sandy. And at that point, there wasn't a World Trade Center, or, and the Holland Tunnel took a lot of that water, and the Battery Tunnel took that water. We all know that. But the reality, if I'm stating the obvious here, you've explained it, but I just want to make sure I'm totally getting it. So I'm saying the right thing to my neighbors is that this wall will definitely protect us from storm surge, no doubt. But we're still going to have to manage the tremendous amount of rain that comes down, and that's what's going to flood us. And it won't be able to go anywhere until the tides change and the system eases, and then it can flow out. But buildings that flooded during Sandy in these areas that are orange and a little bit blue will likely flood again. So their basements will get flooded again. Am I?
Hey, hey, Wendy, it's Gwen. I think that's a nice segue to the rest of the presentation because he said, Russ, you're not quite done yet. So
That's right. That's right. You set me up really well. And you're
This is the problem here, yes.
you are correct, right? The big problem here that we've talked about is that water cannot get out. And that's what's causing the flooding in these areas. And so we really have one, well, not necessarily just one, but we have one solution here that will help us in that scenario, and that's to pump that water out. And so we initially looked at this from two perspectives. We can pump from those existing combined sewer overflows, which will have to manage a much larger drainage area. Or we can look at pumping from our existing stormwater outfalls, knowing that Battery Park City has already a separate storm sewer system. We can continue isolating from the city's combined sewer system and just pump out the small amounts of water right at those outfalls. What we're really moving towards, what we've moved towards here is pumping from the CSOs, because it allows us to centralize that mitigation solution and affect a much larger area. And so that's what we're going to, talk about, is what that pumping solution looks like. When we were originally, oh, go ahead, Peter.
You may jump in here and talk about the pumps.
That's perfect.
So, as Russ was saying, we recognize we have to pump because we have to take the pressure out of the system. So we started by looking at temporary pumps because we thought, temporary pumps obviously have an advantage because you don't have to build anything significant except for the pit that the pump nose goes in, right? And we did a lot of research on that. We looked at larger pump stations that are temporary across the country. We had lots of conversations with DEP about how they currently use temporary pumps. And this table does a good comparison of the research that we've done across the country and with DEP. Long story short, because so much water needs to be pumped, we're at a place where a temporary pump station setup that we would need to set up is unprecedented in the country because it's just so big. Maybe, Russ, if you can flip to the next slide, I can show you some of the temporary pumps that we're talking about. When we're talking about temporary pumps, we're basically talking about like a tractor trailer like pumps. We're talking about bringing like 3 or 4 of them in and sticking their nose into these pits and then having them pump during the duration of the storm. We felt that approach was challenging from a lot of different angles. One of the angles is that operationally it's less reliable to have something like that perform as you expect. Temporary pumps have to be submerged, they have to be operated in a certain way, and there's a high risk that during a storm event, when you need those temporary pumps, the complex operation of those pumps might cause 1 or 2 of them to shut down, in which case you don't have the capacity that you need. So then we said, you know what? We talked to DEP and we agreed that putting temporary pumps here would be unprecedented for the city and probably not fit for purpose. So we looked at what can we do to create a permanent but underground pump station. Something that is, for the most part, not visible to the public, mostly underground, and is ready for use when needed during a storm event. So it looked at a couple of different options in the area. Russ, if you can flip to the next slide. And we quickly felt that option one, the Stuyvesant High School option, is a good option technically, and there's a reason for that, which I'll get to in a second. But it has an engineering advantage over the other two options that I'll talk about. But we also said, okay, where else could we fit such a pump station? We talked about the ball fields. We talked about right there, adjacent to the middle school. And we're in the process of doing a more detailed evaluation of each one of these options. But I will say that as our technical preference, that option one is the location that we choose. Initially, in talking to DEP, they seem to agree. And part of the reason why that location is good, Russ, if you go to the next slide, is that it's right next to the existing exhaust pipe, the overflow that goes into the water. And that provides a lot of advantage for us in terms of the construction of that pump station. So again, just big picture here, Russ set up to need the pump. We didn't think temporary was going to be a good solution, and we thought that the reliability of that and the complex operation of that was going to be a risk for the authority. Plus, of course, you have to store all that equipment. Plus, you have to at least annually bring all that equipment to site, start it up and run it for a bit to prove to FEMA that the system works. All that would be quite complicated. And so we said, let's see if we can find a place where we can put this underground, where we can use natural gas and not diesel as backup. And all the other advantages of having something that's permanent, right? The reliability of it, the maintainability of it, and this is also DEP's preference as well. So that's what we're looking at right now. And Russ and Gwen had both mentioned that we're now in the process of finalizing the research that's necessary to establish this as a base case with DEP, and then move forward and get into the more detailed design process. Russ has a couple shots of locations 2 and 3. Russ, you want to flip through those?
Yeah, this
And
is
what does
the ball fields location. Again, as Peter mentioned, one of the challenges here is that we have to pipe this quite a long ways to get that to the outfall.
Right.
And so that, that requires a fair amount of additional piping and infrastructure to get it there. I did want to point out that we are looking to essentially consolidate these two outfalls with one pump station. And so we do need to do some additional piping to make sure that all that water can get to this pump station. But a 60 MGD pump station is fairly large, but we do have some very recent experience of what that might look like. Again, this schematic is an underground pump station, but this is from a project that we're currently working on now for Bellevue Hospital. It gives you a sense for kind of what that would entail.
Right. This is going to be put. I don't know if you're familiar with Bellevue, but in the middle of the complex, next to the big rectangular building, there's like a parking deck. There's a bunch of parking decks there, and we're looking to take that small piece of property and drop this pump station in there, and that will be used to protect Bellevue during a storm event as well.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of questions. And so just to clarify, you're having one pump station and that's in front of Stuyvesant, you're rejecting 2, and that was the alternatives of 2 and 3 are not being used? I was a little confused by that.
Yeah, no, it's a good.
I think one
Yes,
thing
we're
that's
only going to
gonna
build one pump station, and when
burning question will be, what does it look like from above? In other words, how many, you, at one point you said it was underground and then we heard mostly underground. So what part is mostly
Yeah.
above?
So let me just back up before I get to that question. So we need to choose one location. As part of DEP's process, the DEP has just, for due diligence, asked us to look at a couple other locations. So it's prudent for us to identify a couple other locations. That's why options 2 and 3 are shown in that diagram. But again, we only need one, and our preferred location is location 1. When it comes to what's below ground versus what's above ground, there's a couple of things that need to be above ground. And let's break that down. The pump station will need to have backup power. Normally backup power is an engine generator. We'd like to put a natural gas engine generator down in the pump station because we would prefer not to store diesel. And we suspect that the community doesn't want to see the diesel pumps regularly exercised annually for FEMA, nor do they want to see those types of emissions anywhere in their property. So we're moving away from diesel pumps. The exhaust for that engine generator that's below ground has to go somewhere, and so there'll have to be a pipe that comes out of the ground. And when the pump station is used, that exhaust will be on. When there's no storm, that'll occur when we do annual exercising, which could be a couple of hours each year. Obviously, during the storm event, the pumps will be on and that exhaust will be exhausting from those engine generators. That's one thing that has to come through the surface.
How
The other thing-
where it's going, and how big and long the exhaust pipe is from the ground?
Yeah, these are good questions. I mean, we haven't designed this yet, but you know, the stack obviously has to lift the exhaust so that people who are around the stack are not seeing it. So I don't think my sense is that it's not going to be a significant diameter. When I say significant, maybe it's less than 12 inches in diameter. And then in terms of height, I think we'd have to determine that. But again, I just want to be super clear. During non-storm conditions, that pump station will run that generator for a couple of hours each year, just to make sure it's ready to go. And of course, during a storm, it's going to be turned on to pump. So it's not going to be something that's normally turned on.
Is there anywhere in New York we can see this currently, this type of system?
You know, New York doesn't have a lot of pump stations that have stacks like this. Normally DEP builds them above grade. And so this is a innovative way of making sure that the pump station is, for the most part, below grade and not obvious to the public. You know, I would say a good comparison for this could very well be, I don't know, when you walk around Manhattan, you see the regulator chambers? You know, DEP has these regulators and they have these regulator stacks that come up out of the ground every now and then. Do you recall ever seeing them? But those are fairly large diameter pipes that come out of the ground that are used to basically depressurize the regulators. If you haven't noticed them, it probably means that they're being effective at being incognito. But basically, I'm thinking about something like that in terms of its look. But certainly as we go through the design, this is going to be a big point of feedback from you folks as well as the Public Design Commission.
Okay.
I think the second thing that's going to be part of the surface expression is just simply access, right? Like DEP has to get down to the pump station to turn it on, maintain it, move equipment in and out, and that access, DEP will very likely prefer stairs. So if there's a stairs there, we'll probably have some type of enclosure that encloses the stairs. So what we're trying to figure out right now is what could that stairs exhaust combo look like? At the moment, from a design perspective, we're thinking the size of this thing very well could be the size of a newspaper kiosk in the old days, something like that. That's sort of the size we're talking about. But again, we met with DEP to figure out what they are looking for in this because they're going to be operating this pump station. And so part of the design process with DEP will determine exactly what the public sees when it walks around the pump station.
Is this, looking back a year or so when we were looking at pump stations, which we were then told we would not be seeing in Battery Park City, which were these 70-foot long, 18-foot high, you know, basically like a mobile trailer. Is this a similar system or this is completely different? I'm just curious if this is kind of rethink of that.
Yeah, I know what
If I could just clarify that when we were looking at the South project, We were looking at the potential for using interceptor gates.
Yeah, that was the interceptor gate. That's right. Yeah.
That's a completely different kind of system that would require control houses. I think that they would have required 2 different control houses. So that's different than what we're talking about now.
Different purpose. Okay, so that's not coming back, but this is not doing the same thing. Okay, I guess I never understood it. But anyway, oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question online, if I may.
Yeah, and loud, yes, you are.
Richard, it's your turn.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, there's something that I'm really missing here about this pumping. So the issue here is to do this during storm surge and a rain event. But what are we pumping into since the storm surge has raised the height of the river? I'm not sure what it is, how you can be pumping into the river if the river is that high.
It's a good question, right? So we are pumping into the river, but the pumps have the capacity to push past that head and push it into the river. So in a sense, the reason why we have pumps is because we want to pump into a quote unquote pressurized environment, which is the surge. But yes, that's why the pumps will easily overcome the head by the surge that's caused by the storm.
We do, another important component is that happens on the other side of the tide gate. So we take that water that's within the dry side, the protected side, and then we pump it around essentially the barrier, that tide gate there in this example, so that it doesn't essentially come back into our protected area.
Right. So other questions on
And
this?
if I just the last, and the water that's being pumped, this is runoff only. It's not sanitary water. Is that correct?
It's combined sewage.
Oh, it's both. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, we're engineers. We pride ourselves on being very sustainable. At this point in time in New York, there's no other way to get rid of that water but to pump it into the Hudson or conversely in the East River, which is what the FIDI project is doing. At this point, during the storm event, the goal is to simply depressurize the system that the city already has so that the system can function and help let the land side drain. If we didn't have the project and we didn't have the pump station, it would be just as mixed up and going into East and Hudson anyway. So what we're trying to do is basically make it work to protect Manhattan.
Yeah, essentially what happens is this would function the exact same way if there was no surge event. It's just that overflow would be able to drain as it currently does through that combined sewer overflow. So all we're doing is essentially getting it above the surge with the pump station. But it doesn't really function any differently than how it would without the surge.
Right. Now, I do want to bring up a point about the permanent pump station. Some of the decision making about the permanent pump station was, if we're going to build something there, can that be useful for cloudburst or extreme rain events? We had just talked about New York getting 8 inches. A couple years back, New York got 6 inches. So we're clearly experiencing as New Yorkers rain events that are approaching and crossing the 100-year threshold. Part of the benefit of having that permanent pump station is that this type of station could be used for future cloudburst events to help depressurize the system. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you had a temporary setup, right? Like if we had a big hurricane coming up the East Coast and we'd call in the temporary pumps, the setup of the temporary pumps is measured in a couple of days. And with that type of setup, we could never respond to a thundercloud event or a cloudburst event But if we have the permanent pump station, it almost gets like a dual purpose. You get the benefit of that for the design conditions that we're using for our project, but at the same time, it's very helpful for this unanticipated but significantly increasing rain event that New York is beginning to experience. So with that, so Russ started off with the bad news, which is those bad images. I talked about the pumping, and now Russ is going to bring it home with the pumping, these are the improvements.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? This is Laura.
Hold on.
pump solution.
Whoa.
Yeah, Laura, just a minute. Joel's ahead of you. So go ahead, Joel. We got a question here.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead,
the
Joel.
two solutions you're talking about is this as opposed to temporary pump, I guess, vehicles that you bring in during rainstorms. And so my question, you might have already answered this, but what is the benefit of having a permanent pump station as opposed to these vehicles that you can bring in? And then also I was wondering what the depth of the pit is,
Yeah.
because you just listed length and width.
Sure. Russ, maybe if you can flip back to that comparison chart. This chart spells out the comparison of both systems, but basically cutting to the chase, a temporary pump system of this size has not yet been built in America. And so our recommendation is that we wouldn't recommend this to the authority because we think that the size of this pump station would be 2 to 3 times beyond what is currently existing in the US. And the size of this temporary pumping station that we're proposing here is probably 4 or 5 times bigger than whatever the DEP has in terms of what they're currently temporary pumping right now. So these are technical comparisons here, siting, cost, O&M, but from a risk and reliability standpoint, we wouldn't recommend something that's unproven, particularly something that would be so important and necessary for the authority and the residents when a storm hits.
Laura.
Right, so just the second part of my question was about the
pardon.
depth of the pit.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not something that we fully designed yet, but you can see here on this schematic for what we're looking at it with Bellevue, is that depth can be well over 30 feet. So it can be fairly deep. A lot of it is really depending upon that infrastructure that's coming in, and then how big we need that wet well to be to efficiently run those pumps. And so that's something that we'll have to iterate through as part of the design process, especially once we kind of identify the siting in a little bit more detail. In this case, since we're very close to the outfall, we might be able to take advantage of that and not be necessarily, super deep in this area.
But if you have 32 feet as you're showing here, which actually it looks like it's 20 feet above ground and 32 feet below or something like that, what adequate space for this? I mean, this has been sort of like tested in terms of what is in fact available.
Yeah, we've looked at that, and again, as Russ said, going deep is an engineering challenge that doesn't have a large public expression or impact once it's built, right? And the advantages of going deep are when you go deep, the floor of your pump station is below all the pipes that are coming in, which is obviously an advantage. And when you're going deep too, you're able to more predictably run your pumps, because when you have pumps of this size trying to move as much water as they are, if you kind of think about it, like it's sort of like a vacuum cleaner. It's like you don't want your vacuum cleaner to suck up all your water, because what'll happen is if our pumps begin to suck up air, they cavitate and they shut off. So you need a certain amount of volume of water so that the tip of that pump is nicely submerged so that it can run at full power and not have any operational risk. So, in order to make this thing reliable when it operates, we would like to go a little bit deeper, to be lower than those pipes that come in, and to give us a little cushion so that when we run the pumps at full speed, we are not going to keep it dry and then have the pump shut off, which is what we don't want.
Laura?
Can you go back to the slide of where it is at Stuyvesant? Is it on the north side of Stuyvesant? Where is
Well,
that?
it's in between
East.
Stuyvesant and West Street there.
Oh, I see, in that big no man's land place.
It's like a little plaza area there, yeah.
That's no man's land. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, was my question. Thanks.
No, I have just a question. If you're going down 30 feet deep, you have to really see what the soil conditions are under there, right? Conceivably, maybe see would not be good for this type of compensation, correct?
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry, I missed a couple of the words.
Saying to go 30 feet deep, you have to really know what the soil conditions are underneath.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, yes,
And
for
I-
sure.
Right, and conceivably, there could be soil conditions that would not be good for this pump station, right?
Yes, it's possible, but again, if you asked us our technical opinion, we're pretty comfortable geotechnically about this particular location. Generally speaking, the authority's property, once it's off the raised platforms, has pretty good geotech conditions. And so, we're thinking that that's not much of an issue here. Again, we like this location, as Russ said, particularly because it's right next to the place that we're going to pump it to, and it makes the project a little bit more compact and a little bit more hydraulically efficient.
There are several engineering challenges, but there are in all of these potential locations, and so these are things that we would be looking at more closely as we advance the design.
Right. So before we get into the results with the pump station, any other questions on this particular portion?
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm curious, actually, are the pumps made in the United States, or how far do they come? Because one of the things we're talking about is trying to be more green on the planet and not shipping things halfway around the world. Is that, I mean, I know you haven't designed it yet, but, who are you working with? What company could actually make something this giant?
Yeah, that's a good question. So from a permanent perspective, these pumps aren't that abnormal. There's a lot of installations like this. Like I said, the where it became like past practice, like past current practice is then temporary pumps. But the permanent pumps are made all over the world. Some are made in the US. And I think that we can certainly take a look at that during the design process. I do predict that DEP will have a preference for certain types of manufacturers, because if you think about it, the DEP owns a lot of pumps, and they would like to have one spare set of equipment for those pumps. And so the DEP probably is going to have a dialogue with us about what pumps they prefer. But I hear what you're saying, and we can certainly look in the design process as to where the pumps are sourced, where the pumps are fabricated. I think in many cases, even US made pumps have large assembly parts that were manufactured in other countries, not just in Asia, but in Latin America, in Europe, in Germany. I know a lot of pumps are made in Germany right now. So we can certainly take a look at that during the design process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, go on.
Construction schedule wise, is this intended to be done within the timeline of the rest of the project? And sort of corollary to that is how long, I mean, I'm thinking this is right next to a high school. How long does that construction project take in elapsed time for this particular part?
It's a good question. This project is meant to be in parallel and within the other project, so it's not going to extend the other project in terms of its duration. This construction is, if you think about it, it's sort of fundamentally different from the rest of the project. It's more of a mechanical project, right? More than like the flood defense system and the esplanades. So I think in many ways it's almost its own sort of sub-project within the overarching project. Again, depending upon the design, we think a construction duration of a pump station like this could be anywhere from 18 to 24 months plus or minus. But again, we're still refining that number. But that's based upon our experience designing and building things in the US that have similar size. But it's, once you get in there and you build a hole and you put your stuff in there and you close it up, I mean, it's a relatively efficient, compact project, and that's the intention.
I'm just thinking of the digging the hole part tends to be noisy and disruptive, and there may be sheets to go in that may have pile driving involved, and that part of it could be very disruptive to the school next door.
Absolutely. We certainly wouldn't be using impact piles for anything in this project, particularly in this, because of the vibration and the noise that is caused. We would typically be drilling them in or pressing them in. We call them low impact or low vibratory methods to cut down on noise and to cut down, maybe more importantly, the impact that the project has in anything that is around it.
Thank you.
Tammy?
I wanted to, thank you so much. I wanted to ask about two things. One, when you're talking about a 12-inch exhaust pipe, how far up off the ground are you talking? And it's unclear to me based on this diagram exactly where that would go. If it's near, for example, the intake for the schools, windows or doors.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll start by saying we haven't designed that exhaust vent yet. We don't have any image that shows the location of it. But the good news about that is we have a lot of flexibility on where we put that. We certainly don't want to put it near an intake or next to the school. We want to put it in the most, in the optimized location so that it's away from as many people as possible. I also think there's a as we go through the design, Tammy, we'll have to take a look at, what height we're required to build it to get the appropriate amount of approvals from New York State DEC and DEP. DEP has the air quality division. So we'll be looking through all of that as we get into the design process. But, again, this is going to be classified as an emergency use pump station. And so it really is going to be very intermittent and, just like the DEP regulator chambers around the city, no one's ever, I watch them because I'm an engineer and I like to look for things like that. I've never seen a regulator chamber overflow, right? But they're designed to do that, but they do that, but it's an emergency condition, right? So, we want to be prudent here in how we design this thing. We want to recognize it's an emergency condition. We're clearly getting down the path of natural gas because we don't want to have diesel emissions, nor do we want to have diesel storage. We would, of course, take a look at any other way of best generating the power that would be necessary for those pumps.
Okay, I have two other questions for you on this.
Just before, and I want to say, just as a point, I'm assuming the power is out and we need to rely upon the backup generation. It could also be the case that the pumps can be powered by the grid, in which case the generator wouldn't be turned on. I'm just making it a worst case assumption there, right? So I just want to be clear.
Absolutely. The water that you're talking about pumping into is a estuarium, and it is somewhat protected under DEC and the Hudson River Park Trust Advisory, the Hudson River Park Trust Legislative Act. What approvals, is the water treated in any way that's going into the pipe that goes out there? B, is there any change or approvals that you need working with, I would assume, Hudson River Park Trust on this?
That's a good question, and we will probably have to have more dialogue with DEP on that. Keep in mind, though, that what we're doing is we're actually tying into an existing combined sewer outfall that currently discharges. So if you go there today, that combined sewer outfall is right there in the corner. And probably over time, the DEP has experienced high rain events, and through that outfall has come mixed stuff. So, I'm pretty sure that when we got 8 inches, we had an overflow there. So, we're proposing to build a new one. We're proposing to tie into one that's probably already permitted for the type of purpose and the range of conditions that we'd be thinking about. But it's a great point. Obviously, we want to be clear with DEP and HRPK about what we're doing here. And the authority has planned meetings with, of course, HRPK to explain this to them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are you continuing? You have more to go, right?
Yeah, we have a couple more slides, sorry. Any of us, bring it home here.
So as Peter alluded to, there are a lot of benefits for this solution. The primary benefit is that it reduces a significant amount of flooding. And so what you see here is the modeled results with the isolation components in place, as well as a 60 MGD pump station that's located at that Stuyvesant location. There's some additional drainage improvements, primarily upgrades to the sewer systems in this area between the two combined sewer outfalls, just so that we can connect those hydraulically and pull from more areas that are flooding. And what this does is it essentially eliminates all this flooding area in the northern part of the protected area. This extends all the way down essentially to the World Trade Center site. At that point, we are limited in what the pump station on the north can manage, but the goal would then be to connect in with other city-led projects to reduce flooding further down to the south. So with this one pump station, we can have a pretty significant impact on flood reduction within the northern project area.
Russ, maybe just to be more explicit, when Russ said other city projects, he's referring to FIDI.
That's right.
And the pump station that's being currently advanced as part of that project that would handle the lower Manhattan area and depressurize the interceptor that runs around the hook of Manhattan.
Are you?
Justina?
Yeah, I'm just gonna wait till I think we're finished.
So just a few conclusions here. Then maybe we'll just manage these last two slides and then open it up for further questions. Just some key takeaways is that with this project, we've modeled it and we've identified that there's very limited flooding right on Battery Park City itself, but there's an incredible opportunity at Battery Park City to mitigate a lot of that flooding that occurs along 9A and east of 9A. We did look at temporary and permanent pumping solutions, as well as pumping from the existing storm sewer system. And pumping from the combined sewer system allows us to maximize the impact of that mitigation solution. With that 60 MGD pump station, we can mitigate that flooding within the area to less than 1 foot. And so we would be able to demap that entire project area or that entire area of the project from the FEMA maps. And then the next step would be to look at this under a much wider range of conditions. And so, when we initially started this presentation, we talked about the initial design criteria as well as the 1% annual exceedance probability for that joint probability event. But we want to look at this under those cloudburst scenarios, extending this to also examine the 10-year and the 100-year rainfall conditions, as well as the future impacts due to anticipated changes in rainfall intensity under that future 100-year rainfall condition. So we are trying to really examine this fully and understand how we can optimize this solution as part of a flood mitigation option within Battery Park City. And Peter, I don't know if you had any other closing thoughts that you wanted to emphasize too. This is the last slide that I have.
You and I probably talked too long today about technical rain stuff, so let's see if there's any more questions from folks.
Very much. I'm sure, I know I have a couple of questions, but I see Justine, head of our Battery Park City committee is here. Justine, you have?
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, I do have a couple of questions. And number one, I'm going to apologize because I'm in a car. And if I lose you, I'll call back and I apologize. So excuse me. I also am going to apologize because I signed in late. But I'm hearing these things about pump stations and and sheds, and I don't know if Gwen Dawson's on, but I think Nick would be. Are these the same sheds or the same type of sheds that we were talking about a few months back or a few years back?
You know, Justine, get here late to that, and that's actually a question I asked earlier, and I'm going to ask for a follow-up from the engineers to describe a little bit more completely where we left off with those very large structures that I was referring to, that now Justine is referring to, and where these come in. And specifically, you're talking about the north, but what is in fact happening at the south? Because originally there was quite a bit of this.
If I could, this is Gwen, if I can just back up, because
Yeah,
I know that
Gwen.
we spent a lot of time talking about this. Those control houses that we had discussed, that there would be two of them related to a different kind of methodology for interior drainage mitigation, and that was what was called the interceptor gates, which is something that's being done on the east side, and what was originally the anticipated approach to the South project. As we continued our discussions with DEP on what the requirements would be, because we have to ultimately have something that that DEP is willing to approve and sign off on, because the infrastructure is largely going to be their infrastructure. We were able to get to a point in the South project where we didn't need to do that. We didn't need to follow through with the interceptor gate approach. We instead adopted the near surface isolation approach, which, as I described earlier, is things like pressure proofing the manholes and the kinds of measures that are largely, that are essentially invisible at the surface. But that was a completely different kind of methodology than what's being talked about here with the pump station. And I will add that one of the things that DEP had required us to do when they signed off on the near surface isolation in the South, because one of the things that we had talked about there at their suggestion was, is there a pumping solution in the South? And ultimately, again, we found that the near surface isolation was sufficient for the needs there, but DEP did require us, and as a condition kind of moving forward, that once we got to the Northwest project, we would keep pumping on a pump station on the table in some fashion as a possibility, because I think the expectation was that once we got there, that there might be a need for that, although it certainly wasn't clear until the past several months when the team has been speaking with DEP.
So, okay, Alice, I'm afraid I'm going to lose signal, so if I can jump in. So what you're saying is pressurizing the sewers or whatever else you said will be sufficient to protect the South. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then in the North, you're not sure yet, or now you have to revisit the idea? Is that correct?
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna turn it back over to Russ and Peter to explain this, but basically we're adopting the same near surface isolation, but that alone is inadequate to address the needs that we have in the Northwest. So Russ, Peter, take it from there.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to say thank you. I'm going to go back on mute. Alice, thank you for letting me speak, and I'm going to keep listening.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it simple. We're taking the same near surface isolation approach, but just think about it. There's a big pipe that goes underneath the highway. Those houses that you talked about a couple years ago, what those were for was, at one point, the solution was to take that big pipe and basically slice a knife into that pipe to stop it during a storm. A big gate that slips in from above. That type of gate requires like a large house on top to house all the mechanicals necessary for that gate. That approach we're using on the east side because it's the right technical solution. But on the west side, instead of isolating the interceptor by sealing it with those big knife gates, we're basically choosing to close all the openings up on top. And that's called near surface isolation. So the south is doing near surface isolation, we're doing near surface isolation. But the reason we have a pump station, Justine, is because we have to do more than that because we sort of have a bigger area to deal with. And that's why we need that pump station.
Peter, are you handling the south work as well as the north, or is it a different firm that's responsible?
It's a
for the south?
different firm. It's AECOM, who's the designer. Yeah, I just happen to know about it. Yeah.
So,
They've been coordinating all along.
Yeah, we've been coordinating.
yeah, I guess the only question that always, and I forgive the naivete, but given that the most acute point where water rushes in is at the Pier 20, I'm sorry, the Pier A pinch point, is there anything that's done that's in terms of drainage that's particular to that? And I see Garrett, you're on, but can you answer to why, that seems to, is there something that is more additionally needed in that area or not so much? What I'm learning from this, there is no need for additional pumping or additional isolation tanks or cisterns or any other kind of way to handle what is, an acute point in that area of water. Stuff a bit. Here,
I think Garrett was on, and maybe he can handle that. But maybe Gwen, we can get back to them with that question because maybe Garrett's not able to.
The interior drainage approach and in combination with the flood barrier system for the south evaluated the needs, both the surge needs and the interior drainage needs for the south. And so the conclusion was there was not anything more that was required there in terms of pumping. And that's the reason why DEP was satisfied that the near surface isolation approach was adequate for that project.
Okay, well, thank you. But thank you very much. Other questions from anybody? Looks like we're.
Well, I'll just hop in if there are no others. I'm curious where you got the rainwater data. Is that from FloodNet or something? In one of your earlier slides about the level of floodwater and the amount of rain that occurred.
Are you talking about this slide here that shows the rainstorm that we're modeling? This is the NOAA 24-hour event. And so this is data that has been produced by NOAA and is kind of a typical storm event that corresponds to that 5-year return period and the 2-year on this. We're looking at both the 5-year and the 2-year. So we're looking at both of these types of conditions. We'll expand that to look at more intense events, which are more of an issue for the city's sewer system because it can overwhelm the pipes themselves rather than just kind of collect at a point and that can't be drained. And so we are looking at the more intense events that correspond to maybe a 1-year storm or a 1-hour storm or a 3-hour storm to really understand how the overall system responds within the model.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. I thought it was an excellent presentation. We're all nodding here. And I also want to thank you very much at the authority for arranging the site walks, which I hope everybody has received and selected a date. Just a reminder, the region 1 through 4 on October 19th, 30 to 6, and October 21st, 10 to 12, rain date on October 22nd, and reaches 5 to 7, October 21st, 1 to 3, and October 26th, 3:30 to 6. and this has all been circulated. I also wanted to note that the questions have been answered on the Northwest Battery Parks and Resiliency and have been provided on the Battery Park City Authority's website. So again, thanks for that. I guess specifically, if I could ask on this presentation, if you'd be good enough, I'm going to direct this to Gwen, I guess, to provide some sort of understanding of the whole. I know for me, I still don't quite get it, but I'd love to know where Arcadis and AECom sort of come together and sort of understanding of the 92-acre site of drainage. That would be helpful. And specifically, also a little bit more information on that cistern at the south end. I don't think we fully, or maybe we just need a refresher on it. And given that that's the topic at hand, that would be helpful. And just as a follow-up, if you could do that. I don't know if anybody else has requests for anything, but that would be mine. And anybody else? But otherwise,
Did we ever see a presentation of the drainage for the southern end? Maybe I missed it.
Yeah, there were a couple of them that dealt with the drainage plan for the south, at least, if not more. And I'm happy to arrange for some kind of summary that might reflect how the South and the Northwest have been coordinated and what the approaches are, so that you may have a fuller picture of the entire Battery Park City.
I mean, I guess it would be actually great to see all the drainage, inland drainage solutions around the whole bottom of the U, since Arcadis is working on 2/3 of it, and then you just add in that little AECom piece.
yeah, how would we do that, Gwen? Would you come back or what would you suggest? Just a quick, review of that kind of summary of the whole.
I mean, I'm thinking that there are some things that we can provide you in the interim in terms of being able to reflect, and so that you can see the approach in the South and the Northwest. But I'm fully expecting that we're going to be coming back to you on this project again, and maybe at that time there can be a kind of a more contextual presentation to show how it fits into the overall drainage system.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be really good. I have one question for Peter. First of all, great presentation, really clear. How many of these pump stations have been installed in New York to date? Have any been installed?
I mean, from my awareness, there's the Bellevue one is planned, ESCR, has the interceptor gates. Some of the projects out in Nassau County, 2 of them were installed out in Nassau County. I don't think anything was installed in Staten Island. So I think that, there's not a lot of post-Sandy pump station construction work. There's probably a handful of them. However, having said that,
I mean, I'm happy to see that we're making progress on that, because, we suggested a pump station on a resilience project we were working on, and we were told DEP doesn't have a pump station department, so we can't have pump stations. So I guess somehow they're getting, so do they now have I guess they obviously now have the organizational capacity to consider this idea for the pump station, which I think is good.
Thanks, Laura. One other thing that's come up from some community members that I don't think are actually online tonight, and I don't know if this is related at all, but I did promise I would mention it, is the United States Army Corps variance with the 15-foot regulation between tree and shrubbery line to flood wall. I don't know if this has anything to do with your work, but in terms of resiliency and green infrastructure, it seems important. But I guess the question, does it have anything to do with your work? And if so, there seems to be a call for really looking at that variance and the risks and the possibilities of consideration that this would not be exactly as it's written today, and whether or not that regulation might be negotiated in some way. And I don't know if there's an answer to this, but I did want to identify it as something that was a community concern.
Glenn, you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, this project, the South project, all the projects in Lower Manhattan, um, have started off in planning stages trying to meet that 15% requirement because, there's a reason for that, right? In New York, we haven't lived 100 years with flood protection structures, so we don't know the risk that's caused by trees growing around our flood protection structures and undermining them. However, if you go to places in Europe and if you go to places in, the Southeast and places down in the South, you'll see that there's a significant amount of risk that's brought into a project when you have large trees growing near your flood protection structures and they undermine. The closest thing we have to this in New York is if you go up to Hillview Reservoir in Yonkers, the DEP has been very aggressively cutting down the trees on Hillview Reservoir because the trees are rooting into the reservoir core and causing leakage. That's probably like the closest analogy that we have in New York. So we think it's good guidance. We recognize that there are certain places in the project where you just simply can't technically achieve 15 feet. But what we'd have to do in those cases is convince the Corps that we can send people to those locations in the future and they can adequately inspect and ascertain the condition of the wall. So, there are certain places we recognize where 15% just simply doesn't work because of technical reasons. But we think that it is very prudent to have a buffer around your protection system so that you're not going to subject that system to any kind of root intrusion which could undermine it. And so it does relate to our project because we are using that guidance and we think that guidance is prudent and we think that guidance in many ways reduces very long-term risk that the project could encounter if large trees were to grow.
But what
Peter, hi, it's Claudia. Sorry, Peter, just to be clear, it's 15 feet, not 15%, right? You kept saying 15%.
So I say 15%, I'm sorry, I apologize, I meant 15 feet.
15 feet. Sorry, I just wanted to make that correction.
Great point, yeah.
Thanks, I was wondering about that. But Peter, so is it possible that you would in fact work with the United States Army Corps if it's, I don't know if you can, in certain situations where instead of what people are advocating for, not necessarily destroying 10 trees that we lined up in certain areas, that there might, if they're 13 feet or 12 feet, would there be some wiggle room as it were, or absolutely not?
This is Gwen. I want to just clarify that that what Peter has been describing is absolutely the priority that we have provided to them. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing here, whatever we're building in the way of a flood barrier is effective and it's reliable over time. So that's actually a standalone objective, separate and apart from the FEMA certification, which is also involved in this. So we are really working with our team to strike a balance to make sure that where we have implications for tree plantings within that 15 feet. Perhaps there are other ways that we can put a root liner or containerize things or create a way to have that same kind of canopy or maybe perhaps a smaller canopy while not creating that risk of undermining that flood wall.
Good. One other thing, just for the record, is in our resolution, we did not include plantings and shrubbery, which are included in that regulation, which should have been in other words, that 15 feet, not just from trees, but shrubs and plantings as well, which I guess we can try to correct. Anyway, okay, that's great. Thank you for entertaining those questions. I think we're good. Wendy, I think one last.
My recurring request, especially because this is big and new and engineering and all this kind of stuff, is to invite in, when you're building this, film crews. There's probably a modern equivalent, but that if you go and look at Popular Mechanics for Kids, there is an amazing series where they actually go in the New York City sewer systems. And, you know, I will say, as an adult, I found it really fascinating. And I would just invite, you know, the Bill Nye, the Science Guy, Popular Mechanics for Kids. I mean, you come down the whole list of whatever it is, invite them in early and help them film and put this together, because this is something that the city is going to have to do over and over again, and the world is going to have to do over and over again. So I keep asking, and I don't know if that's a different department or if that's marketing or sales or whatever you have to do, but there's a component of this project that we're missing a big opportunity to teach if we don't do that early on. And I would just say, you know, this is something that is, you know, you'll never get it perfect, but, you know, you all are working really, really hard and you're trying. So I think that's part of the process as well, to say, here's what we learned, you know, here's who we talked to, you know, the Dutch have clearly been living, you know, below sea level for a long time. And so have, you know, the people in New Orleans and places like that. I think this is a story that quite frankly, New Yorkers need to learn about what New York is doing. Because I'm begging you. So thank you.
That's a great point, Wendy, and you have an opportunity at these very sidewalks perhaps to sort of point and to what you're doing in terms of some of what you talked about today, and it's a beginning on the sidewalks. I think that's it now. Thank you again very, very much for your time, and it was a very helpful presentation. And we will see you, I think, in November for some more follow-up, right?
Thank you.
Coming back in November for more additional information on Northwest Battery, or do I have that wrong?
For the parts that haven't been.
For the parts that haven't been finalized, reaches, I think that's 5 and 7, 5, 6 and 7, 1 and 2, I'm sorry, 1, 2 and 5. When? Gwen or Claudia or?
Yeah, Alice, sorry. I wasn't sure if Gwen was said, we may have lost her. But yeah, we'll be coming back in November. And we'll probably also be back to EPC for LMCR, I think, possibly in November as well. We'll see you very soon.
Okay, we look forward to it. Thanks again, everybody.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks. All right, that was interesting. What happened?
Brittany had her hand up.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, Nick, can you guys wait? Because Brittany has her hand up.
Sorry.
I'm still here. I don't know if the rest of the folks are here, but I'm still here. I can take back anything I can't answer.
Garrett is still here and a couple others. Can you make sure?
Okay, but where's Brittany?
There she is.
Okay, Brittany, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see, whatever, we didn't see it.
You're open.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, no problem. I know that you just didn't see me. Alice, thanks for commenting and bringing up the point. I know Greg is really the expert on getting this vegetation variance and applying it. I guess what I heard Peter say, and Nick, maybe you could help, is, you know, you guys are will make the choice of whether that 15 foot is adhered to. But there are exceptions to that rule that you can go and apply for. And, you know, it would be case by case, right? I think, you know, the community's been really clear over and over throughout all the workshops and the walks that the priority is to try to preserve as many mature trees as possible. That is one of the key design principles. And I think as we look at it, you know, there needs to be a tree by tree analysis to understand, could this tree be saved? Not just can new vegetation or new tree be planted next to it, but can it be saved? And I think, you know, we're protecting against climate risks, risks from hurricanes and flooding. But I think it's also important to realize that part of what we're facing is I'm hearing just a little bit of an echo. I don't know if someone has me kind of on double. There you go. Part of what we're facing is that we're contributing to climate change too. And mature trees and green infrastructure is one of our biggest forms of protection as a community, not just in Battery Park, but across New York City, around the world, to trying to prevent climate change too. And I think that we need to make sure that we're thinking about that and the impacts of this project in that context as well. So it's protection from flood risk, but also the impact of this project on contributing to climate change as well. Thank you for that. And Nick, hopefully that we can discuss this again in November.
Thanks a lot, Brittany.
Okay.
I'm glad we were able to do that. Okay.
Thanks, Alice.
And Alice, this is Garrett. I'm sorry for finally appearing at the end of the meeting here, but Brittany, points are very well taken, and we have actually surveyed over 700 trees, tree by tree, and the current design team is also tasked, now that we're starting to work through where the final flood barrier system alignment might be, to actually narrow the focus and do a separate tree inventory and health inventory on each tree. So some of them, because they're built on over the platform, are mature, but they also pose a potential public health and safety risk because they're not deeply rooted. In other cases, trees are perfectly healthy. So there are absolutely instances where, like you said, on an instance by instance basis, we'll be able to petition FEMA for an exception where we're closer than 15 feet. And I think there are many, obviously excellent reasons to do that, but there also will have to be a balance because they're not going to grant every application we ask. So it's something that we're all cognizant of. It's something that is, like you said, one of the guiding design principles, and it's been true from the start, and it is true as we speak. And I think this will just be part of the continuing conversation. But we do have an inventory. We can probably even share the inventory if you'd like. I don't know that anyone wants a list of 700 trees, but happy to provide it if it's of interest. It's available.
Brittany's thumb is up, so I think that list will be.
All right, very good.
Okay, that's a great answer. I hope that's helpful, Brittany. So I would follow up with Garrett on that, and thank you again. Okay, so on to where do we want to spend our money? The budget requests. We're now, this will be by October 30th. This is drawing. We have last year's, which you all have looked at and which has been sent around. I hope some of you have time because this is the final hour for the Environmental Protection Committee to opine. Obviously, you can do this also, I guess, at full board, but Tammy has hopefully, with Anesh's help, I guess, picked this up, the highlights of our ask from last year. Obviously, how many do we have?
Well, these are DEP, so
Yeah.
I sorted by agency.
Okay.
So we can, some of it is not necessarily EPC, but it's sorted by agency, so we can read through and see.
So can I ask the thing that's got sent out earlier? Some of it repeated itself. Did that mean to repeat itself because it was sorted by different things? And was it different years that were mixed in there? It was like, I was just trying to, because I actually did read all of it today, and there's some little typos, it doesn't matter, whatever, they get the point. I figured that this is the thing, they get the point, it doesn't matter, but how was it originally cut? And then if there's dupes, should we be taking the dupes out, or?
The dupes have to do, so each agency looks at the budget request. So the question is it a duplication within the agencies, or was it asked of different agencies? So for example, I'll just pull up The first one that's here for Barnett Newman Triangle, funny as that is. Stormwater retention in Barnett Newman Triangle, rebuild excess public right of way under DOT jurisdiction on Park Row and Frankfurt to accommodate green stormwater infrastructure, including but not limited to rain gardens, bioswales, and permeable pavement. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why that's just there, but, we're, like, whatever this ask was, it needed to be asked of DOT, because you're looking for right of way underneath DOT. And then if you're asking for things like bioswales and other things, it should be in a different, location.
Okay,
Right. For
so,
DOT, so.
so some of them maybe I'll go to you offline for the
Yeah.
things that are outside of this.
Let's use our remaining time. It's a great point. It's, to me, with all due respect, it's a bit of a mess. And here's an example, because the first thing up doesn't make any sense.
But it's down here as well.
Yeah, well, okay, so things like number 5, evaluate a public location or property for green infrastructure. Well, we're not gonna get anywhere with, where we should be identifying places as well. Like, we, as a group, as a board, should think about where are these places where we could be adding green infrastructure. I think it's a good general idea, but if anyone has ideas of specific locations to consider, I talked about that, this would be a time to put them in, right?
And I had another question about the order of it too. Is the order that it got sent out isn't necessarily the order of priority.
Correct. So that actually, no, that's the road number that you're looking at on the left right now. What the best thing to do in each committee is to pick for each committee their top 3 priorities. An executive meeting will go through the list of priorities. Here are the top 3 from environmental. Here are the top 3 from DOT. Here are the top 3. So we'll go around and everyone looks at their top 3. If there's crossover in terms of location, then that is something that you want to figure out and then put to the top. Because unfortunately, they don't, not this year, hopefully next year, they will do priority by agency versus community board priority. It's an extraordinarily unfair thing to say in a community board that tell us your top 3 things, when we could find a top 3 thing for every agency that's vitally important, right? So, and how do you?
Okay, so just to remind you that if you have this document that I think everybody got with the, this one, budget request, which seems to come in different forms, the priorities are on the left. So priority 1, 2, 3 is in fact the number, and also keep in mind you have capital budget and expense. So one is operations, one is capital. In other words, some of them will say research, X or Y condition. That's an expense. That's different than the capital expense of actually building the thing. So in identifying what you want the money to be spent on, just keep that in mind, capital and an expense budget. Right, expense budget versus capital budget. So are there things beyond the mistakes that I'm sure we all see? Are there things that you'd like to add to the list that are not included here? Let's start there before we prioritize, maybe just to have a.
Well, like, for example, there's nothing in here this year of the great sponge presentation that we just had.
Right.
So I didn't see, or maybe I missed it.
No, we added it last week, you're absolutely right. Last time we met, I took notes on a few of the ideas, and that was one of them, and that is now being added.
Okay, because I'm sure we could look through all of the topics of our meetings last year and kind of, like that's top of mind because we just saw it, but there was, things like that were really wonderful that actually did hit the budget eventually, like, it's not quite the same, but like, Deborah Glick passed the bird glass thing, which I know isn't DEP, but like, it's that concept that, it takes a little while to.
Why don't we go around the room and each one of you pick, or if you have done this or are interested in submitting your 3 or 4 or 5 or 1 things you'd like to add or have highlighted or be sure is in this, if that, but
So-
I'd like to do that way, if I might. So Wendy, you're up.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe I did it in a slightly different order, but like, there's number 49, it's more like what my brain saw, and then there will be like what I think is sort of missing. But 49 is the other expense budget request, mayor's office and environmental justice study needed to create a plan for interim flood protection measures for Tribeca along Hudson River Park, West Street, that has been done in the South Street Seaport area. Like, we got a presentation by that department saying that they rejected.
Is that assigned to?
That is the DEP, that they came back to us, and said that that's not possible. So I just feel like if they've been like so explicit, we should just take it off this.
Well, remember, there are points to ask for budget. That is part of the budget process. There is also an advocacy reason to leave something like that on.
Okay.
Even if it will not be funded, from an advocacy perspective, you leave it there.
Right, because as we know, like if we're, to your point, we are unprotected.
Correct.
So, but that's fine, but
And
as
so
we know,
maybe we change the agency on that.
so that one, yeah, I don't know, but anyway, that, when I was reading, I'm just kind of randomly going through the things that I write down.
Go ahead, go through yours.
And like number 50, it was, other expense budget request, Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice study long-term comprehensive resiliency infrastructure from Northmore Cities project west side of the island, to be meaningful, needs to connect with resiliency infrastructure, Canal Street. That just needs to be, it says this is especially timely as the federal government has not renewed funding for New York and New Jersey harbor. That was because that was during the Trump administration, so we just need to update that. That's not a big deal. Yeah, so, hang on a second. There might be a few other things, but, but in terms of in general, it's not obvious. The Fidei Seaport is in here, but it's kind of buried. It's a little bit like the cobblestone, like everything's listed street by street, and then there's a whole one that says in general cobblestone. And that's kind of maybe what I was asking, do you want to have like, block by block, area by area, and then it's like, in general, we want the big U.
Yes, and the reason is.
Yeah, you're a
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The reason is you may get funded for one
Mhm.
out of your 5 asks.
Mhm.
Or you may be able to get a study funded, but not your 5 asks. And if you don't have all of those in,
Yeah, you know this better than I do. Yeah, you have to do it. That's why I'm asking how you like
these were questions that we asked.
sliced and diced.
Training as well.
Yeah, sliced and diced in different ways. And then I just thought like the jail, there's a lot of things in here which just needs a little more updated. Alice is like, as soon as
Is
she
that
reads the,
EPC
she's all over it. It is Department of Environmental Protection number 38.
It's incredibly helpful, are you kidding?
So it's like hire an independent environmental monitor.
Yep.
So I think that's good. I'm sure there's more detail that Alice will.
No,
We
no,
need
that's,
that.
yeah,
We need
that we already asked for as a community board now, yeah.
And we just have to figure out which agency we asked it from.
DEP, it's supposed to be DEP again.
And
That's not appearing here.
yeah, and then this is like, there's a lot of things in here which are great for the new Brooklyn Bridge Park, or, the skateboard, under the Brooklyn Bridge. So this is fund a stormwater retention planter study underneath the rainwater scuppers for the Brooklyn Bridge. So there's a whole thing like that could be, I'm sure.
Done, they got, we should talk to Rosa, because some aspect of that was funded and.
That's what I was figuring.
Rosa's here right now. Hi.
That's great. So that's number 37.
How should we rework that?
Yeah, I just figured that needs a little updating when I read through it, not that I.
No aspects of it was funded.
Sorry, say it again, Rosa.
None. She said there was.
None of it was funded? Okay. I
We
think
got $5,000 as a mini grant from the MVP, but obviously, like even to build a prototype costs a lot more, especially since we sort of supersize the project. But yeah, I can speak more to it later. Sorry, I didn't want to take from Wendy's time.
I think it's correct in that what I said, which is that you got $5,000 towards the study. And this is an expense budget item and it wasn't noted as a capital budget item. So maybe you want to.
Well, exactly. And,
Right.
you know, and she might have other things, because I know when I just went on her wonderful recent tour and planted all the natural or native plants, that there's going to be hope for bees and hope for other things to come in there. Like, I'm sure there's more detail we could put in there because that costs money too.
So Rosa, you're going to be doing that, I assume. Forgot that.
Yes. When's the drop dead deadline?
The full board meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thought this was really good. The number 36 was study the expansion of DEP's green
Yeah.
infrastructure program in order to fulfill critical needs for adequate stormwater capture, provide expanded green infrastructure, green belts, bioswales. CB1 would like to see budget increases for investment in new technologies required to advance sewage treatment plants and wastewater management. So like, that's like, those are big concepts. So I was just, it's above my pay grade to know what that means exactly.
Well, that's kind of what, that's actually what I wrote, and you're absolutely right, and that's why I was asking if we could specify where some of this green infrastructure could go and ask for capital expenditures that are specific to a rain guarded in X location. You know, that would be a way to attack that more specifically and particularly. I agree with you.
Exactly. And another one is like, number 31, which is not, it may not be on this one, but it's on the,
Coast Guard building site?
yeah, it says fund a feasibility study on repurposing the Coast Guard building site for public community use, including but not limited to a senior center under EDC. I just thought that that was kind of like a random, I mean, we want it first to be part of the resiliency
Right,
big
that's
U,
big.
and what exactly it's used for is like very secondary at this point. So like, so yes, we might need a senior center, but that's not the place to put the senior center. If that,
100% agree with you.
I think it
definitely
threw
hear
me
you.
off a little bit.
Well, I think because nobody was discussing it as part of the resiliency plans until this year, and that's
Yeah,
why.
exactly.
And
And
people
then-
were all about the senior center last year.
And then the other thing that, so number 27 was, this is a Department of Transportation, but provide funding to study the impacts of the Holland Tunnel related traffic on Canal Street and Lake Street, ways to navigate the environmental quality of life impacts. I was really struck by that sponge study that they came in and said, we have the second worst air in New York City. I don't know if anybody else like went out there going, wow, I go there all the time and I'm breathing in the second worst air in the whole city. So we don't have that anywhere to say, like, could we have like an air pollution, like task force for like around, if we're literally, you know, there's a million preschools right there. There's, you know, I mean, it was so upsetting to hear that.
It also stands to reason considering the traffic.
It totally does, and we just, you know, we live in a different alternative universe, not thinking about that, but I don't know how, if we could talk about air pollution as one of our things, or if that's not really what we talk about in our meetings, but.
We should certainly.
But I think that's important.
You know what I'm
Air
saying?
quality is extremely
No,
important.
absolutely.
And then,
And the construction that's exacerbating it.
yeah. Let's see, and I think the rest is there, although number 16 was the animal and pest control requests, including reducing rat and mosquito populations. So to me, those are, and I love it that it's the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. I love it that that's the department, but that's a separate issue. But to me, it touches on our world because mosquito populations get addressed through spraying. And that is something that is different than, you know, rat mitigation. And
I would agree that this would be Department of Sanitation.
so, I was a little confused by number 16, you know, again, above my pay grade to know how to, but I kind of feel like those are two separate issues, like the mosquito versus the rat thing is maybe, I don't know if I would combine that necessarily. Let's see, one more thing. Okay, yeah, that's not for us. Yeah, and number 7, was just the, Pace University is the location site, goes to the Department of Environmental Protection, but it's like evaluate a street segment of, or intersection for green infrastructure, rain garden, stormwater, green street, or plans for construction of feasible study to, the reconstruction of, the DOT jurisdiction, Park Row. This is like, this is, I think that the whole thing here is under the Brooklyn Bridge ramp. It's a little, it seems to say that Pace University wants this. And I think what we're really saying is this is that new, the new park under the Brooklyn Bridge. So I just
There's
think it's.
also a park that is on the Pace side.
Oh, on the side there? Yeah, because it's just like grass right now and
But
like that.
It's actually cement and
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah, oh, like under the ramp, yeah.
Rosa, if you could provide the names of those, I know you know them.
That's called
Wait,
Drumgoole, Drumgoole.
Yeah, I just felt like I was a little confused by that. Not that it's not the right thing. I just didn't.
We should clarify the names of where we're tagging.
Yeah, and that it's more.
It's
than
also
Pace.
owned by DOT, so legally it's DOT land. It's managed by Parks Department in conjunction with Pace University. So Pace University is actually managing it on a day-to-day.
And I would think on that one, that would not be an expense budget priority, but rather a capital expense. I don't think you'd have to study it. We should be implementing green infrastructure in that area. I don't think that, I would call it implementation, and I would be asking it as the capital expense unless, I don't know, that would be my recommendation. Anyways.
Let's go to the
Okay.
next
Yeah,
person.
next one.
Wendy.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
that's
more?
good. Thank you so much.
Did you got it? Wendy, thanks a million.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna end with you because you've got a little something you want to add at the end, so.
I also have a budget request.
Okay, but I'm gonna end with you, so.
Okay.
Okay. Who's next? Sarah?
I didn't get the download of the orders, so I am not organized quite yet.
Okay, well, so just send anything you want through this week. That'd be great. We can add it
Thank you.
in. Again, anything from you?
I don't have it in front of me. I looked at it earlier and I was more looking for anything I thought should be removed. I didn't think any of it should be removed. I would very much support an air quality study and adding the sponge issue.
Yeah, good, okay. Could somebody just, when you say air quality study, could you just flesh that out? What would be like the money or?
The money I have.
Yeah, what would be how would you want to be spending? Like, what is it that we're asking for? A study of?
It's
the whole
alarming.
neighborhood?
It's alarming to hear how poor the air quality is, especially in the Tribeca area.
Yeah,
So looking more into that and what can be done about it.
right.
Like, what are the causes? If there's a study to see what are the.
Like a health.
What are the actual causes?
Mhm.
What are the contributing causes?
Which if we incentivize EVs, it could go away.
What'd you say?
Sorry, I'm just getting
Electric
crushed by
cars.
the anti-car people, but I said, I bet you if you incentivize EVs, that would be a problem that could be taken care of.
But there's like also, like jail construction and things
Yeah.
that are.
I'm just saying. right?
But Colin, you have a good thing, like, if we want more EVs, we don't have any place to plug them in, or we have some, but not enough.
Put them in, what do you mean, the charger?
Charger.
Oh, there's plenty of places to put them in.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a longer conversation, but I get a little frustrated when the kind of anti-car lobby comes down on EVs. So that's where my motivation comes from. But there is no path around a cleaner downtown without EVs incentivized. It's as simple as that. It's been proven in many large cities.
Do we have that in our request?
It's from the US.
Our next, Colin.
Just in a nutshell, my frustration about what the city does, and sometimes what we talk about is more about resiliency and response to climate. We don't actually talk about electrification or, and sorry, just a personal pet peeve. I would love to do away with green infrastructure. Let's talk about climate resilient infrastructure, which is, you say green and you trigger people. So it's just.
Well, that's what it's called by the city of New York, so.
Yeah, they're behind the times.
Yeah, well.
So-
No, no.
Yeah, But the three pie in the sky things I have, which are mostly for a statement, Essex Street Garage has a fantastic municipally run and purchased DC fast charging station. It's literally the only one in Manhattan, which is crazy. I know I'm gonna upset the anti-car people, but the reality is EVs are growing at about 300%. They're inevitable and they're considerably cleaner, in many cases, 75 to 100% cleaner than internal combustion engines. So I would like to see.
Stations.
What's that?
More electrical
But
charging.
some
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah, but the city actually bought one at the Essex Street Garage where they have like 15 chargers and 5 of them are DC fast chargers. And there's literally a line down the street.
Is that a city-owned garage?
Yep.
Colin, what about?
So there is a potential to do something like that then at the
Absolutely.
Battery Park Garage.
Yep.
Which is city-owned, I think.
Yeah, Essex Street Municipal Garage.
The HPD has one, right, along the whole, you know, the.
That seems like a good
Yeah,
ask, Frankfurt.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
DC.
It is.
DC fast chargers, that's all that matters.
Okay,
That's
I
one that-
think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Is that like an EDC ask into the garages to find? Because that's really, the charging stations are part of probably a public-private.
I don't know, it's specifically a municipal garage. I don't know who paid for the chargers, but it's a municipal garage. It's subsidized, so the cost of the garage are much lower. The price for charging is also subsidized. As an EV driver myself, it's literally the only DC fast charger in Manhattan,
Well, and it's interesting because all the cars that the city agencies are doing are now
which I don't have access to.
e-cars, but I
Yeah.
mean, finding the locations for the infrastructure to support that is really important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Second one is, and this is totally pie in the sky, I'm gonna get yelled at for this one too, but funding for a feasibility for a study for grid scale battery storage and desalination at Governor's Island. Not a bullshit greenwashing excuse for a climate center at Governor's Island, but actual climate resilience.
You had that in right in the beginning, like 2
Yes,
years ago. I
and
remember.
I'll say this on the record for everyone wants to hear.
Totally there.
Governor's Island is a developer's dream, it's all it is, it's greenwashing, it's not a climate center. Do something real, put grid scale battery storage, a peaker plant, utility scale batteries on the island so we can power Lower Manhattan when the electricity goes out during a storm.
Okay, do we, you're going a little past it. What are you
Sorry.
asking
That's
for
my-
on Governor's Island specifically?
Well, I mean, I guess what I would love to see is actual grid scale battery storage and desalination, but they're never gonna pay for that. So if I think to start with a feasibility study for grid scale battery storage, which is commonly referred to as a peaker plant, backup plant, before power goes out. You wanna get really crazy, you can put wave power underneath, or you can put wind power offshore, but that's down the road. What I'm looking for is grid scale battery storage peaker plant.
I don't know what that is myself, really. No, I remember you
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about it years ago. I have to recuse on this anyway, but it would be up to
Yeah,
you
no,
all.
that seems
Giant batteries
good.
to back up the power grid. That's it.
Yeah.
Can that go to Manhattan too? Or is it just?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole point of
Okay,
it.
yeah.
Governor's Island is a perfect
And
place
those
for us
peaker
to.
plants are natural gas.
No, they're batteries.
So
So
battery.
bigger plants right now are natural gas. They used to be coal,
Yeah,
but grid scale batteries have been ready for prime. This is really in the weeds. Have been ready for prime time for 10 years. But the problem is the only way you can the only place you can put them is large utility scale wind projects in the middle of the country.
yeah.
The best place that we're trying to move them right now is for large scale peaker plant backups for cities.
Okay, so the peaker plants are actually just batteries.
They can be. Right now, they're mostly gas because gas is
Can you-
cheap.
Right.
Can you find somebody who can give a presentation to the community board on
I
that?
thought I just did, but yes.
Committee?
Yeah, I can. Finally, sorry guys, I'll be really fast.
No.
This is about the article I sent both of you guys about the building in Boston. I would love the city to get real about passive housing. I mean,
Here, here.
Yeah, that was.
you couldn't build another tower in the city unless it was passive housing.
Bob Schnack.
Boston just did it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm from Boston. I admit Boston is definitely better
So
than New York.
what's
in
the
many ways.
ask though?
But don't let Boston show us up. Let us be the model.
Right, so what do we, let's.
Feasibility study for requiring all new construction downtown to be passive housing. Simple as that.
Yeah, to go to a passive house standard. I mean,
That's all it is.
this is also referencing Bob Schnack.
Yes,
Yep.
it is a option.
Yeah.
I am playing more, but those are the three ones that.
Well, what about your thing about, saving the water?
Well, that's desalination. Oh, rain collection systems.
Yes.
Yeah, I just came up with that tonight, but that would be
But
a good one too. Yeah. It sounds like they're on it, but I'd love to see it accelerated.
Study.
Yeah, that'd be another feasibility study.
But all these are statements, they're political statements, and the city's doing some decent things that they certainly don't tell us about, but they need to accelerate. it is all this, again, I'm sorry, this is, you guys haven't guessed this is what you've heard, but, you know, California lost trillions of gallons of water during that, what they call it, when that rain just kept coming in.
Yeah.
And
But they could have used, been.
it all washed right back into the ocean. They couldn't collect any of it because the soil was, not permeated, but, it was saturated, thank you. So this all washed right off into the ocean. And so now California is freaking out saying we need rain collection systems. Now California is drowning in water, but in a summer or two, they're gonna be dry again. So they want to figure out ways to collect water. We need the same thing. What are the roofs?
So our ferries are electrical or they are, what's the ferry system?
Probably diesel, but they should be electrical too. Oh,
Okay.
put that on there?
Yeah.
That's It is on there, yeah, okay, absolutely.
You guys can do a wish list, it'll go for hours, but those are my favorite ones.
We have definitely, we don't have it on the budget request, but we have, do we have it on the budget?
GRC.
I thought it was on, yeah,
It's under transportation.
definitely have it on resolution.
And
Yes.
incentivize EVs for congestion pricing, but that's all.
That's not a capital or budget expense.
All right, okay, you're good.
I'm good.
All right, great, thanks a lot. And just to say, you know, there will be coming out hopefully more on air pollution, more on sanitation, more on recycling, all of these things that we have to cover in this committee. Remember, this committee started as the waterfront subcommittee on resiliency, if we can't seem to get out of that, particularly given all of these presentations.
Just be more proactive. We gotta stop reacting as a city. We
Yeah.
gotta stop reacting. We have to start being.
I'm gonna have a really
What about
interesting
helicopters?
moment. Yes, sanitation.
Helicopters.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be proactive and say, next.
Okay.
That was done, Fiona.
Dancy.
I'd like to see more emphasis on solar. There is hardly any mention, and it seems to me that there must be a way to tie that back into the grid, and buildings, homes could have solar panels on their roofs.
But we have the new, carbon zero text amendment, which includes the use of roofs now and allows roofs in New York to have, whatever it is, 3/4 of solar panels and all. But is there a specific ask in terms of a capital budget item that you can align with that? I'm thinking, which is great.
Well, you could start with saying, New York City public government buildings such as schools and where it's feasible to, capital projects to put solar panels on New York City public roofs that it's practical. I mean, it's not practical on this
Study
building.
that would show and
Right.
make them go and look at this stuff rather than just say, you want to do it.
The problem is there's not nearly enough square footage in New York City to power the buildings with solar panels. It's just not
Each
efficient.
building,
Yeah.
even if it's a backup.
To power 8th Spruce Street, my building, you'd need, an entire neighborhood of solar panels to power that. Solar is unfortunately the least efficient.
Okay. Good to know.
I have a question though. In this list, there's something about asking the city to upgrade the infrastructure at the seaport so that the streets don't flood, basically. Shouldn't Howard Hughes be doing that as part of their lease?
Thanks.
I mean, why is it the city? Or is it because it's infrastructure and therefore?
Yeah. I mean, Howard Hughes doesn't own they have leased, they don't own it. I mean, that's one solution I would draw. So it's the, whoever.
I mean, whoever wrote the lease should have thought of this, but that's.
Well,
all
no,
my-
we definitely brought that up a lot in terms of what they should be doing for resiliency. They claim they are, that the pier was built in a certain way above sea level and such, so you hear this, and yes, you don't see much about resilient materials being used on the areas around where they are, but presumably that will be, part of the steep white ice support plans going forward. It's a little bit of a gray area, at least to me it is, so, but it's a very good point. But I think it's part of the same point about all of these surfaces, these large surfaces being made more resilient. Yeah.
Would it be possible for someone to do a study so that they could recommend materials to be used? Or do,
I think those materials are known. I think we should be careful with just sort of throwing out study this, study that, study this. A lot of studies are done, a lot of not-for-profits in New York City and throughout the country.
I wondered if
kind of
were a central point where somebody
Yeah.
could go and look it up.
Yeah, I think it's.
It's there already.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't know where it is in the current evaluation. But this is 301-202-407E. Evaluate a street segment or intersection for green infrastructure, e.g. rain gardens, stormwater green streets, and plan for construction if feasible. I think that's part of that. And indeed is,
Does it have a location under there?
Yeah, we were adding Gotham Park.
does, but, it relates to almost everything we've been discussing.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe, yeah, absolutely. So we might want to tease that out so that we have separate places. That's a
Absolutely.
great idea.
And I don't know where that is on your list because I didn't.
Oh, it's number 7. Yes.
Okay, good.
All right,
Priority 15, hire additional uniformed officers. For quality of life issues, I think maybe include like, tracking unlicensed cannabis dispensaries. Having seen that presentation they gave us for the Office of Cannabis Management.
I
it was
saw
just- It was, yeah, it's just like a joke. It's like, is this like a satire of like how incompetent like government can be?
That's a slightly different committee, but you're.
no, it's,
I mean,
that's not our thing.
But it's embarrassing if we can poke holes in like this as like lay people, like, I don't know, and, there's an inordinate amount of cannabis smoke everywhere. And I think it's kind of crazy that we have all these like, don't smoke tobacco. It harms your fetus, it gives you cancer, but then like people are allowed to just.
I actually
light
think
up
that is a legitimate question.
Light up on the.
Because we have smoke-free New York in so many ways. I'm not quite sure I understand, to your point, what is smoke-free about what we're experiencing in our neighborhood now. There is an environmental question on
Yes,
that
there's a
front in terms of, why is this okay and
This other
cigarette.
And so many high school students during their lunch break.
So what could we turn it
That's
into?
a-
What can you
That's
turn it
What
into?
what is this? Like, yeah,
capital
exactly.
request.
What can it
Or
be?
it's-
Or I mean,
Another study, or what are we doing?
Say it again, Vera.
No, I'm saying, how do we turn it in?
Yeah, so what is it, another study?
Well, it's kind of like Andrea was saying, it's sort of related to point 15, of more budgeting for enforcement. I mean, after all,
Yeah,
it
enforcement.
probably is already against the law, any kind of smoke is against the law in a smoke-free place, but they're not enforcing it.
it's gonna be hard to imagine how it'll end up possibly being enforced when the new cannabis licensing
Well,
will.
yeah, I know, but like everything else, a lot of this is a statement of, goals or.
Yeah.
Maybe this is
Is it legal to be high in?
to smoke inside. That's the thing. Does cannabis need to be smoked outside exclusively? I don't know the answer to that.
What do you mean,
No.
in terms of the law?
So, because there are smoke-free buildings.
Did you say
Yeah.
your own
So
dispensaries?
you assume that a smoke-free building includes all smoke.
Yes.
I believe the same rules apply to cannabis as apply to, same rules and laws as applies to other smoking. It's just a question of enforcement.
We'll add the point about the additional uniform officers in terms of control of enforcement.
Different committee, but that's.
Yeah, I just put it down so that while we're
Don't
talking
we
about
have rules about selling drugs within so many feet of a school?
it. Yeah.
Yep,
So wouldn't that
it's,
smoking come within that?
no,
No?
Sadly.
And
Selling
so
it.
that's specifically stealing.
And one of the things, okay,
Yeah.
others, Andrea, did you want to?
Sponge.
The sponge, yeah. that's a
Depends
great-
on the time.
yeah. That's a great job with that.
It's something is like that.
I know.
And I think the environmental monitor. Just like, just
Yeah,
air
the
quality.
independent monitor for the jail.
For jail, and also just for the entire neighborhood, like, where's it coming from? Is it like, it carves off, or there's no tire traction, you know, I don't know, like, what is it wrong? So like demolition.
Latent 9/11 dust. Who knows?
So I'm not sure I understand the ask there. It was hard enough to get it.
You would like to have a capital expense to put air monitors throughout the city and specifically Community Board One to find out what's in the air.
Yeah, and just where is it the worst? You know,
You're
there-
elected to do a few of these summaries because I think not come up.
Yeah, I'm
with
just
that.
trying, I mean, right, that's what, you know, that would.
I mean, it'd have to be
great.
something that,
Well, it could be a
Yeah.
baseline for congestion pricing. What's the, you know, does it in fact improve or does it maybe not improve at all?
Good idea.
all right. Okay, Wendy, you do
And for
that.
electrical.
Okay, Vera.
No, I mean, everybody already said everything. Nothing more to really add, but, what can we do to like change standards in terms of construction, noise noise and air quality? Because I think that it is not, the standards are really not protective of seniors and children. So is there something that we can do? What can we do? What is a money ask on that?
Interesting, because I think there was a new, rule thing today, which was
City
actually
council.
weakening the noise,
Required.
Construction.
around construction. Yeah, weakening, lessening,
Really?
yeah, not for the public benefit.
Yes. So it would have to be like, I guess, studies on.
Revising the noise.
On impacts on children and seniors who are next door to, I don't know.
I mean, that's the kind of thing where it's a resolution and legislation. In other words, there you work with maybe Martha or something on a bill that's talking about that. I don't think that's about money being spent on
And
a
especially
state.
noise that's on after hours.
But
After, you know, not creating after hour variances for construction sites that are, you know, with large noise causing nuisance.
that's one to work on as, I mean, I don't think, not all of these have to be, they could be legislated and, you know, built with, but, you know, would change policy, change
We
regulation.
need to get data. That's what it is in order to change. In order
Which
to
is probably
change that.
out there,
People working on it.
ad infinitum, right, for noise. and all.
Is there anything we can do in terms of adaptive reuse? Now, I know isn't there already, a directive that there's supposed to be any capital project? Or a building, you're supposed to examine adaptive reuse first prior to
I don't think
demolition?
there's any directive, yes, that's certainly something I know I'm
I thought there
working on
were,
a little bit with Chris, you know,
right,
talk about that.
because, you know, just to be able to look at, we know that demolition causes so much
Yeah, it's ridiculous, I think there should.
environmental waste, everything, so if there's something that what can we ask with respect
Well,
to that? I
that-
can't think of it.
That one we're working on a little bit, I mean, I'm working on a little bit with, you know, the idea that there would be a requirement that city-owned properties would have to be reviewed for that sort of use prior to demolishing them.
Yeah.
And that landmarks would also have to look at them before they get demolished. So that's, I know, I think that would be a great bill. I know that Chris is interested in trying to support some version of this that he's working on, or so he said. So I don't know, to me, that's a great one, but I don't think that's to get money.
I know, I'm trying to think
Yeah,
of what.
but I think it's really, really important, really important. In fact, we should probably do a resolution if we haven't already, because I think that's a great idea. Okay, Jeff.
That's all I
I don't have any requests to add beyond the ones that have been discussed, which I think are really good, but I have a process question, I guess for Tammy. I see from the report from, you know, last year's, you know, there's the adopted budget response and, you know, it varies, but some of them say the community board should contact the agency. And I'm just asking, number one, when do we get these responses? When in the time of year, when we get these responses? And do we have a protocol for monitoring the responses and at a minimum, take advantage of when they actually ask us to talk to them?
I think yes, and I think it would have been very helpful if we had a district manager since May.
Yes.
Because a lot of the follow-up that happens.
Is that when they come in, is like?
They come in Q1, right? And we had summer interns who loaded everything together in a spreadsheet so we can all look at it together. Quite frankly, I attended my first budget training, this past month, which was really fascinating to learn a little bit more about the process. And I think we will look ahead. I mean, there was a lot of openness by DCP, who was running the training with LMB, to look at different things, to understand how a community board views things and the timelines of how community boards work. And I do think that not everybody gets an answer at the same time. And so the coordination is something that we're going to work on looking ahead. But we're also hoping and advocating, which we might need to, they say it's in the works, that a community board, beyond the district needs statement that you do as a verbal thing that has to be typed and written and the rest of it, would be able to then prioritize per agency. So in each committee, you could put your top 3 priorities, which really speaks to what's going on, because when it goes, let's say, for example, to DEP, if the request and the priority is maybe number 1 for the environmental committee, environmental protection committee, but falls to like number 20 because we have quality of life and crime and housing and other things, parks that we have put above in that, then when it gets to that agency, it says priority 17. Not understanding that's actually the first priority when it comes to that agency. So there's a lot of change that I hear is happening afoot. I don't know how real that may be. Yeah.
All right, does that do it? Okay, so Joel, take it away. Actually, Rosa, sorry, did you have your hand raised? Rosa Chang, are you still there?
I did, yeah, I'm here. It's all right. The meeting's going pretty long, so I can just sort of, talk to you guys offline, or we can talk at the full board or whatever. I mean, I did notice that there were a lot of things related to Gotham Park, and I think that we could probably consolidate them to try to get the numbers of requests down a little bit. I think that might be helpful.
Can you write up the way you'd like it worded and then send it to Tammy and me?
Yeah, of course.
Kelly, is that okay, Rosa, or do you want to go over the committee? I'm happy.
No, we don't need to go over it now. I can write it up and then send it in.
I have a feeling none of us are going to argue with whatever you write. Thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
Before you take it away, I do want to introduce the other guy in the room. This is Mark. Is it
Wooters, yeah.
Wooters, who is an architect and an urban planner, right? In fact, we just realized we were colleagues together, graduate school briefly, we think. That's really weird. That's how we recognize each other. In any case, he has volunteered to help out on questions to do with resiliency that we might have, and does a lot of resiliency work in New York City.
Thank you.
It's,
That's amazing.
kind of an amazing resource. We understand there'll be no conflict of interest or getting jobs through us or anything like that, but you should have the goodness of your heart, you're here. And thank you. So I just want to make sure that maybe Mark was, and we can answer questions, and that's right. Is that representing how you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating listening to everything. I've worked on a lot of resilience projects in New York City and in a few other places, and also a lot of green infrastructure work and cloudburst projects.
What are the other places?
Like
what? I did the resiliency study for the Brooklyn Navy Yard, Metropolitan Hospital, the side, Coney Island. I worked in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Did a little site in Jersey City. And I did start, one of the reasons I'm here was I was fascinated by the FIDI Seaport resiliency barrier. And if you may have seen me, I was in all of the workshops produced by Zoom, participating and trying. offering my 2 cents.
Right.
That's
Well,
great. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do see the other hand up, and we still have Joel, but thank you for coming, introducing yourself, and wow, what a resource. I'm delighted to connect again. Okay, Joel,
Thanks.
now it's take
All right.
away.
So I have a
Richard.
few,
And then Richard.
air quality things I wanted to bring up, which is relevant to what we talked about.
Remember, we're
First,
concentrating on budget, capital budget items you'd like to
Okay.
see.
well,
get
let me
money.
start with the
Yeah.
budget then.
Yeah.
Electric ferries, I know it would be a tall order, as we said, but I think it would be good to include it for the Staten Island Ferry because they are under our jurisdiction with Whitehall. So yeah, do you think that could be a budget request?
I don't see why not. I would certainly support it myself personally, but I'm not the only board member, so
We have done the request for
But he's
electrification for all ferries. We will have, as I told you before, a presentation by Hornblower on the ferry contract that they were just awarded by the city, which is not the Staten Island ferry, but it's a different one, and we'll see what's gone on in that. And then,
And when is that presentation?
I think they're coming in November, and I think we can connect you with Betty. We did have a presentation by New York Waterways on electric ferries, which
Yeah.
start, because many different peers, many different agencies.
Yeah, I
here's
was just
the-
focusing on Staten Island.
Right, so the capital budget, somewhere in this document that exists is to be asked for money towards electrified ferries. Is that what you're saying? Okay, so that
So
would
it's
cover
easy ones, it's easy to target where you're going, because we've made a general estimate.
Okay, so.
Okay.
Next. Anything
Right.
else?
And then also besides electrifying, you can also do something called repowering, where essentially when the motors are replaced, you put an electric motor instead of having to buy an entirely new ferry. Air quality, I still think there should be incentives for private schools with electric school buses because I'm trying to get a transition at my school. And as to your question of where these air quality issues are coming from, a lot of it's from vehicles. Private schools cannot transition to electric school buses without these incentives because they aren't available for private schools. And so if you want to see improvements in air quality, I still believe that incentives for private schools.
Why not public schools?
Public schools have them, private schools don't.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not a budget request,
Yeah.
that is a request for legislation for a tax change.
Okay.
Yeah.
As to Colin's point about Governor's Island, I think perhaps looking at small nuclear reactors for Governor's Island would be a good way to have a baseline for Manhattan.
I'm not gonna support myself
That has-
personally,
I can't support
let you
that.
know.
That has-
Yeah, we need.
That has to be a discussion.
So we
Okay.
can kind of get the idea.
Snuck in.
That has to be a committee
Yeah,
discussion.
so I would hold, I think it's great discussion, but I don't know that we have.
We
a
never
budget.
fit down Pilgrim, but I can't.
I just don't know, I
Yeah.
personally, would support that, but
Yeah,
other people, if
okay.
they vote for it, that's fine.
Yeah. Also, I'm curious if the board wants to bring into discussion electrifying or connecting street vendors to the grid. So if you
Yeah, they have a lot of
want
use.
to bring this to discussion, we can talk about it next time. There are many benefits to connecting vendors to the grid. Right now, their only option really is to use natural gas generators, which there are a number of problems from this. Air quality, it's bad for the health. You know, they're in close proximity to carbon monoxide, pollutants, PM 2.5 particles generated from that. So it's bad for the vendors and the customers. Also, it's surprisingly bad for the environment because of nitrous oxides. And so instead of forcing them to use natural gas to generate electricity when we have the grid, I'm wondering if the committee would like to talk about that next time. And then if so, we could bring into discussion DEP, New York Food Truck Association, as we talked about.
You're missing the main thing. You need to have the person you're trying to make change and have.
Yes.
Food,
So,
the food.
You know, that's what.
so I'm asking if the committee
That should
wants
come under land use zoning and economic development, because it's an economic development program for them to change all the carts and the Union you know, because we talked about, they have a map on where they can go and can't go. There's not electric in every place. Like, you know, it's a very, very big topic that you have to take in different places.
Well, I'm happy to take it into the committee, you know, as an agenda item where you have, you know, identified, you know, one, that anybody wants this besides you, i.e. the very groups that I talked about, you know, all of the mobile truck people. Is this something that there's any movement for? You know, there's a lot of advocates out there. And then, you know, from that, which, you know, is this a DEP related item? And if so, who would be the person to contact? And then you could take it into what Tammy's talking about, but let's start there. I don't know that the next meeting is going to work because November is, you know, huge, coastal resiliency. So, but at some point, once you've done that research, would be great. Yeah, Colin, maybe Colin.
I'll be honest here. There's actually, sorry to interrupt, but you remind me of a thought I had before, which can help you. When DOT or NYPD or FDNY have lights or whatever happening around the city, they're always gas or diesel generators. I had it originally, I know a company that does battery generators or batteries that they can just like plop down, have, you know, 25 hours runtime. Maybe these are kind of similar things where one would ask the city.
They rechargeable.
Yeah, of course. We're gonna ask the city to get rid of all these diesel generators and these massive lights or whatever the police use, the car use. But at the same time, have the same kind of availability to street vendors too, for batteries.
Because it's all electricity. Why doesn't it just share the grid? It's much cleaner for the environment.
Yeah,
that way. We just
really
share the
good
same
point.
grid.
Yeah.
Well, then there is the grid.
I would like to invite you guys all to the community block party we're going to have at Gotham Park, where DOT is supplying us with those electric generators, and so you can see how they work in real life. And I would also like to say that at Gotham Park, we are also going to be doing electrified kiosks, basically providing an infrastructural spine that the kiosks and vendors can plug right into for water, sewage, and electric.
Great. Well, send us the invitation.
We haven't made it yet. We're a little behind schedule on that part.
Hang on. Yeah, go ahead.
The last action that the city took on this subject was in 2013, when they linked up kiosks with the city grid. They tried it for a little bit and then stopped.
Do you know why?
They stopped because they said it wasn't scalable because of the issue that Tammy brought up about kiosks wanting to move around.
Right.
So I think instead of mandating kiosks to, you know, or carts to get new carts or whatever, just say that they can keep their current ways. It's just that there's the option of them plugging in to the grid. There are many different outlets, you know, just based on the fact that there are lights everywhere. And so having a smart system where they could tap into that and be charged, I think would be much better for the environment and is something you should look at.
I think it's very thoughtful. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and go ahead and do a little more homework. You're unbelievable. This is a guy who's at school, as we all know. If you could tell me who you think we should contact DP now with our new district manager, we can make these connections happen a little more.
And then in December, we could bring in the relevant parties after that.
I hope so. Yes.
Your presentation.
Yeah.
Is there composting in any of these? I didn't see that.
Oh,
Because composting, we had a program downtown that was pioneered by the Downtown Alliance. It was such a successful program that has been taken over by DSNY. And so we do have composting in Lower Manhattan. So it is awesome. There are lots of great locations, and the Battery Park City already has as well, so.
And I've invited them, being DSNY, to come in and speak to us on all the new garbage rules, all the new garbage containers. And one of my asks here will be the addition for money so that every building can pay for and afford the new fancy pants garbage bin.
Well, in Brooklyn, they have all those little brown, cute little bins now.
But you have to pay for them, so we need money for these and for, you know, for buildings to support it.
We have another pilot
Okay,
being
cool.
rolled out of those in the neighborhood.
So that's one that's on the list to be updated. So Richard Corman there in absentia. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, you were just talking about the first one that I was going to mention, which is the trash containerization. I don't know why we're getting an echo now, or I'm getting an echo. Yeah, so the DSNY has this pilot program of putting these bins out, and I think we should request accelerating that program and bringing it online here in District 1. You've talked about the air quality. I totally support all of that, especially the Holland Tunnel analysis. What about the supporting the roundabout that we saw, the bio park?
The sponge, Richard. It's the sponge.
Wait, can't hear you, can't hear you.
Yes, yes, that's on
You're
the
covered.
list.
That's covered. Okay, that's great. And local law 97, I think, to what degree, I don't know what degree we've covered it, but there's going to be an enormous expense that I think the city needs to help support, maybe through some low-cost loan programs or what have you, but buildings are not going to be able to do it without financial support.
Good point. That goes into the solar panels that I think it's Andrew brought up. Sarah, anyways. Okay.
And then
sorry.
the last thing, did we get something in there for the West Side Resiliency Task Force that we've been talking about?
Yes, it's in there. It's not named as such, but it is in there. So we can now update it so that it has the name. Yes.
Okay, great. That's what I got, and I support everything else.
Oh, thanks a lot, Richard. Okay, sorry, yeah.
The absolute last thing I want
Yeah.
to bring up was charcoal grills. During the food fairs that have been happening on Broadway, there's been a lot of charcoal grillers, and I've actually brought in a air sensor. Now, the levels that are acceptable for 24 hours from the National Ambient Air Quality Standard is to be below 35 micrograms per each cubic meter. It's been well below that typically, but there were a number of spots I measured that it was actually 999 micrograms per cubic meter, which is, here's just some photos, okay? So right by these grills, you've got customers there, you've got the,
I believe you.
grill sellers.
I believe
This is
you.
a number of locations.
I really believe you.
This is unacceptable.
Okay, what is your?
And you can see it far away too.
Okay, your suggestion.
Okay, so my suggestion is,
Propane?
Alice,
Okay, sorry.
my suggestion is to use electric grills,
No, it
because,
doesn't taste good.
all right, well,
Okay, but wait, let's hear it. What do you?
electric grills
Yeah.
don't have that pollution and they're connected to the grid. It's just so much better for the health. Who said it doesn't taste as good?
We're not there yet, you know, but.
Joel, I should back to Korean restaurants with the whole.
Yeah.
I want you to take your thing.
Electric ones taste worse than.
I want you to take the truck, go into the one, I want to see how much better it is in.
All right, before you guys go, I do want to respond to Richard Corman to make an announcement with DSNY. The Downtown Alliance is partnering with, again, DSNY for a new containerization for a clean curb program, because DSNY is partnering with the bids. That's how the rollout's going.
Yeah.
So they've had success already to date at 57 Gold, 75 Wall, 10 Hanover, 50 West, and 26 Broadway. So there will be a new container that will be installed at,
All right, just pass it. Send it to us.
yeah, I'll send it out. It's a new statement.
Thank you.
All right.
Perfect. All right,
Thank
we
you.
did it
Thank
before
you.
9 o'clock. Very good.
Good job, Joel.
Adjourned. Thank you.
All right, everybody.
Must be